My wife's family will always come first. You will always be last. My son, Matthew, spoke those words, looking me straight in the eye. Brittany, my daughter-in-law, nodded from the couch. I agree, she said. With that coldness I had come to know so well, I felt the blow. But I didn't crumble. I looked at both of them and responded with an icy calm. Good to know. They didn't know what they had just unleashed. They didn't know that tonight I would make the most important decision of my 66 years. I would sell my apartment. I would call in every marker. I would invest every single dollar in myself. And when the financial emergency hit them weeks later, when they came asking me to pay off their debts, what happened next would leave them completely speechless. But before we get there, I need you to understand how we arrived at this moment. I need you to see the 40 years of sacrifices that brought me to this living room, to this conversation, to this breaking point. It all started when I was 26. Matthew had just been born. My husband died 9 years later in a car crash that shattered our family. I was 35. Matthew was 9. I remember that first night of widowhood. Matthew was crying in his room. I was crying in the kitchen, surrounded by unpaid bills and a future that looked like a black abyss. My mother-in-law suggested I move back in with my parents, that I look for another husband, that I leave Matthew with her on the weekends so I could restart my life, as if my son were a mistake, as if my life needed to be erased and rewritten. I said no. I worked double shifts at the department store downtown. I came home with my feet bleeding inside my shoes. But Matthew ate 3 meals a day. He had clean clothes. He had new books at the start of every school year. What I ate or didn't eat didn't matter. He was my absolute priority. I sold my wedding jewelry when Matthew turned 15. Those gold bracelets my husband gave me for our anniversary. I sold them one by one to pay for his tuition at the best private school in the city. I remember the day the jeweler weighed them. I remember how they shone under the cold light of the store. I remember thinking, this is love. This is what a mother does. Matthew never knew. I never told him that those bracelets paid for 3 years of his education. I never told him that sometimes I ate only toast so he could have roast chicken twice a week. I thought that was how love was built. I thought silent sacrifice was the right way to be a mother. I was wrong. When Matthew got into college, I sold the car, the only car we had. It was a beater, but it ran. I sold it to pay for his enrollment and the first 2 semesters of his engineering degree. His dream. After that, I took 2 buses to get to work, 3 to get back. I left the house at 6 in the morning. I got back at 9 at night. My legs swelled up so much I couldn't take my shoes off without pain. But Matthew was studying at a top-tier university. That was the only thing that mattered. I turned down 3 dates with good men during those years. Widowers, with stable jobs, who looked at me with genuine interest. I told them no. I didn't want any stranger making Matthew feel like he was less important. I didn't want distractions. My entire life revolved around him, around his future, around building something solid that he could inherit. Love, sacrifice, devotion. I thought that would come back to me. I believed in give and take. How naive I was. Matthew graduated with honors at 24. He got a job immediately at a major corporation. I was 59. He started earning well. Very well. He moved into a condo on the north side. I was still in the same small apartment where I raised him. I waited for him to say, "Mom, now it's my turn to take care of you." I waited for him to invite me to dinner on Sundays. I waited for something, anything. But the calls became sporadic, the visits too. He always had work. He always had commitments. There was always something more important than seeing his mother. And I waited, always waiting. He met Brittany when he was 32. I was 61. She was beautiful, confident. She came from a huge family. Mother, father, 4 siblings, 12 cousins, uncles on every corner. A loud family that celebrated everything. Birthdays, baptisms, graduations. They turned even random Tuesdays into events. From the beginning, I knew that for Brittany, I was in the way. She didn't say it. She didn't have to. She showed it in the silences. In quick glances toward Matthew when I spoke. In that way of making plans where I didn't fit. The first Christmas after they started dating, they invited me to dinner. I arrived with a cake. Matthew's favorite since he was 7. a homemade German chocolate cake. I had baked it that morning. Brittany looked at it and smiled with that smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, how sweet. But we already have dessert. My mom brought her specialty. She put my cake in the fridge. They never took it out. I found it days later when I went to help them clean up after another family dinner. It was untouched, covered in plastic wrap, forgotten. I threw it out myself, in silence, feeling something dark growing in my chest. They got married 6 months later. The wedding was big, expensive. I contributed $20,000 from my savings to help. It was everything I had saved in 5 years. Brittany wanted that specific venue. Matthew asked me for help with shining eyes. "Mom, I know it's a lot, but it's our special day." I said yes. I always said yes. At the wedding, they sat me at table 7, far from the groom, far from the head table. Brittany's parents were at the main table, her siblings too. I was with distant cousins I didn't know. Matthew passed by my table once, just once the entire night. "You doing okay, Mom?" I nodded. I smiled. I said everything was beautiful, because that was what was expected of me. To be small, to be invisible, to be convenient. Brittany got pregnant 8 months later. Lily, my first granddaughter. Matthew called me, excited. "Mom, you're going to be a grandma. We're going to need you a lot." And I ran. As always, I was at the hospital during the entire labor, 22 hours. Brittany was screaming. Brittany's mother was holding her right hand. I was in the waiting room. When Lily was born, they let me in at the very end. After 10 members of Brittany's family had gone in, I held my granddaughter for 3 minutes. 3 minutes before Brittany's mother said, "Let me hold her again." I gave her back. I went out to the hallway. I cried in the hospital bathroom, silent tears that no one saw. The first few months were intense. Brittany was on maternity leave, but she called me every day. "Patricia, can you come over? Lily won't stop crying. Patricia, I need to sleep for 2 hours. Can you watch her? Patricia, we're out of diapers. Can you bring some?" I went. I always went. I crossed the city on the bus with bags of diapers and formula that I paid for myself. I took care of Lily while Brittany slept or went out with her friends. I cleaned the kitchen. I folded the laundry. I made dinner so they would have something ready when I left. Matthew would get home from work, see me, and say, "Thanks, Mom. I don't know what we'd do without you." But he never offered to drive me home. He never asked if I was tired. He never asked what I needed. I was the solution, not the person. Lily turned 1. There was a big party in Brittany's parents' backyard. I arrived early to help decorate. I brought a yellow dress for Lily. I had embroidered it myself over 3 weeks. Little flowers on the collar, satin ribbons at the waist. Brittany looked at it. "Oh, how cute!" But I already have her outfit. My mom had it custom made by a designer. My dress stayed in a bag, in a corner. Lily wore the maternal grandmother's dress. I smiled in the photos. I clapped when they blew out the candle. I left early. No one noticed I was gone. 5 more years passed like that. I was the emergency grandma, the last-minute grandma, the grandma who solved things when no one else could, but never the grandma invited to the important moments. Lily's first day of school, the maternal grandmother went. The Christmas play, the maternal grandmother went. Kindergarten graduation, the maternal grandmother went. I received photos via text, days later, with a brief caption, "Look at Lily." No context, no invitation, no place in their real life. I existed in the margins, in the emergencies, in the awkward moments no one else wanted to cover. And I accepted it, because I thought that's how love worked. I believed that if I kept giving, eventually I would receive. I believed in infinite patience, in eternal waiting, that someday Matthew would wake up and say, "Mom, thank you for everything." That day never came. And then came that afternoon. The afternoon where everything changed. Matthew called me. "Mom, we need to talk. Can you come over?" I went. Of course I went. I arrived at their house at 6 in the evening. Matthew and Brittany were sitting in the living room. Serious. Lily was at the other grandmother's house. "Sit down, Mom." I sat. And then Matthew said those words that divided my life into a before and an after. My wife's family will always come first. You will always be last. The words floated in the air like knives. Matthew didn't look away. He was serious, convinced, as if he were explaining something obvious, something I should have understood years ago. Brittany nodded beside him. I agree, she said, with that soft voice she used when she wanted to sound reasonable. It's important that we all understand the priorities in this family. I felt something cold run down my spine. It wasn't pain yet. It was something worse. It was clarity. That brutal clarity that arrives when you finally see what was always there, but you refuse to acknowledge. I looked at both of them. At my son, the man I raised alone, the man for whom I sold my jewelry, my car, my dreams. And at her, at the woman who had turned my son into a stranger. I took a deep breath. I counted to 5 in my mind, and I said, "Good to know." Matthew blinked. He expected something else. He expected tears. He expected me to beg. He expected me to make myself small and say, "I'm sorry, I'll do whatever it takes to be closer to you." But I said none of that. I stayed still, watching them. Brittany tilted her head. There was confusion in her eyes. "That's all you're going to say?" she asked. I smiled. It was a cold smile, a smile I didn't even recognize myself. "What else do you want me to say? You just told me what my place is. I understand perfectly." I got up from the couch. I grabbed my purse. "Thanks for the clarity. Seriously, now I know exactly where I stand." I walked toward the door. Matthew stood up. "Mom, wait, don't get mad. We just wanted to be honest with you." I stopped. I turned. I looked him in the eye. "I'm not mad, son. I am informed. There's a difference." I walked out. I closed the door carefully, without slamming it, without drama. I walked down the stairs slowly. I felt my legs trembling, but not from fear. It was adrenaline. It was something waking up inside me after decades of being asleep. The way home was long. 2 buses, 40 minutes in total. I sat by the window and watched the city go by. The afternoon lights. People walking fast toward their homes, toward their families, toward places where they were a priority. I thought about all the times I crossed this same city to go to them. How many times did I carry heavy bags on the bus? How many times did I arrive tired and still start cleaning their house? How many times did I pretend it didn't hurt to be invisible? How many times did I swallow silent humiliations because I thought that was love? How many times did I make myself small so they could feel big? 40 years. 40 years of being the last priority in the lives of the people I always put first. Something broke in my chest. But it wasn't my heart. It was a cage. A cage I had built around my life myself. And finally, after so long, the doors opened. I got to my apartment at 8 o'clock at night. It was small, 2 bedrooms, narrow kitchen, bathroom with old tiles. But it was mine, completely paid off. I had finished paying for it 3 years ago. After 32 years of monthly payments, I never missed. I locked the door. I took off my shoes. The silence wrapped around me. That silence that used to feel like loneliness now felt different. It felt like space, like possibility. I went to the kitchen. I made tea. I sat at the table where I had eaten alone so many times while Matthew had dinner with Brittany's family. And for the first time in decades, I didn't feel sorry for myself. I felt rage. Clean rage. Rage that doesn't destroy but illuminates. I opened my laptop. That old laptop Matthew gave me 5 years ago when he bought a new one. I logged into my bank account. I hadn't checked the numbers closely in months. I had always been careful with money. After becoming a widow, I learned that financial security was the only thing no one could take away from you. I looked at the balance. $95,300. Life savings. From extra shifts. From denied expenses. From vacations I never took. From clothes I didn't buy. All saved for what? For an emergency? To help Matthew if he needed it? To be useful when they called? I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. I opened another tab. I searched for the market value of apartments in my area. My apartment, according to 3 different sites, was worth between $370,000 and $400,000. The neighborhood had appreciated. It was downtown, close to the subway, close to everything. I was living on top of a gold mine and didn't even know it. I ran the numbers. If I sold the apartment for $380, if I bought a smaller, modern one in another area for $200,000, I'd have $180,000 left over, plus the $95,000 I had saved, $275,000. At 66 years old, debt-free, with a stable pension of $1,200 a month, I did more calculations. If I invested $200,000 in a conservative fund at 5% annually, it would generate $10,000 a year, plus my pension, plus $75,000 as a backup for real emergencies. I could live well, I could travel, I could take classes, I could do all those things I always postponed because I was waiting to be a priority, waiting to be needed, waiting to exist in my son's life. No more. I opened a new document. I started typing. Life plan. Patricia. I smiled as I typed my name. How long since I thought of myself as a person separate from my role as mom? I wrote, 1. Sell current apartment. 2. Buy smaller, modern apartment, just for me. 3. Invest the difference. 4. Set clear boundaries with Matthew and Brittany. 5. Stop being the solution to their problems. 6. Start living for myself. 6 points. 6 steps toward a life I should have started living years ago. I saved the document. I named it My New Life. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't cruelty. It was survival. It was justice after 40 years of silent injustice. I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed awake thinking about everything, about every sacrifice, about every moment where I was invisible. The day Matthew graduated from college, and in the celebration photos, I appeared in 2. Only 2 photos out of 43 that Brittany posted on social media. I counted them. That night I counted them all. The day of Lily's christening. I paid for the christening gown, $200. Brittany chose a very expensive one. I paid for it without a peep. In the christening photos, I appear in the background, out of focus, like an accident, like someone who was just passing by. The day Matthew turned 40. There was a surprise party. Brittany organized everything. She called me 2 days before. Patricia, there's going to be a party for Matthew on Saturday. At 8, don't say anything. I arrived at 8. The party had started at 7. They had already sung Happy Birthday. They had already cut the cake. Oh, we thought you weren't coming, Brittany said. Lie. They didn't think of me at all. Memories. Hundreds of memories crushing me in that dark bed. My 65th birthday. Matthew called me 3 days later. Sorry, Mom. I missed it. How was it? He asked. I told him it was fine. Lie. I spent it alone. Eating canned soup. Watching TV. Crying in the bathroom so no one would hear me. No one. Not even the walls. Mother's Day last year. Brittany posted a long post. Beautiful. About her mother. About how wonderful she was. About how much she loved her. About how she was her best friend. Matthew commented, Best mother-in-law in the world. I didn't receive even a call that day. Not one. I waited until 11 at night. Nothing. The next day, Matthew sent a text. Sorry, Mom. It was a really heavy day. It was always a heavy day when it came to me. At 4 in the morning, I made a decision. I didn't make it with rage. I made it with clarity. That cold clarity that comes when you finally accept the truth. Matthew had told me my place, the last place, very well. If I was last in his life, then it was time to be first in mine. I got up, made coffee, opened the laptop again. I searched for real estate agencies. I found one with good reviews. I sent them an email. Good morning. I have a downtown apartment I want to sell. Can we schedule an appraisal appointment? Send. Then I searched for new apartments. Modern. In quiet areas. Far from where Matthew lived. Far from that part of the city where I was always available. Always close. Always ready to run when they called. I found 3 interesting options. I bookmarked them. Then I looked for something else. Something I had dreamed of for 20 years but never allowed myself. Travel. Trips for solo women. Trips for seniors. Packages to Peru. To Colombia. To Argentina. To places I always wanted to see but postponed because how was I going to spend money on myself when Matthew might need it? How was I going to be far away when they might call? But now everything was different. Now I was the last priority. And being their last priority, I could finally be my own first priority. I found a tour to Machu Picchu. 15 days, $3,000. I added it to the cart. I didn't buy it yet. But I left it there, waiting, like a promise. The sun was starting to come up when I closed the laptop. I hadn't slept, but I felt more awake than ever. Something had changed. Something deep, something irreversible. And for the first time in 40 years, I wasn't afraid. I had clarity. And clarity, I discovered that morning, is much more powerful than blind love. The next few days were strange, silent, liberating. Matthew didn't call. Brittany neither. It was as if my calm response had bewildered them so much they didn't know what to do with me. Good. Let them be bewildered. I had things to do. The real estate agency answered my email in less than 2 hours. Of course, Miss Patricia. We can come tomorrow at 10 in the morning to do the appraisal, I confirmed. That night I cleaned the apartment like never before. Not because it was dirty, but because I needed to see it with new eyes. With the eyes of someone who was about to let it go. Every corner of that place held a memory. The kitchen where I made thousands of breakfasts for Matthew before school. The living room where we did homework together for years. His room, which still kept some of his old books. Memories, all memories of a time when I thought I was building something solid. Something reciprocal. I was wrong. But it didn't hurt anymore. It was just data. The agent arrived on time. His name was David, about 40 years old. Gray suit, professional smile. He walked through the apartment with a critical eye. He measured, he took photos, he checked the finishes. I followed him in silence, watching him evaluate my life with numbers and square footage. After 30 minutes, he sat with me at the kitchen table. Miss Patricia, this apartment is in an excellent location, close to the subway, shopping district, safe, and you've kept it immaculate. I smiled. Of course I kept it immaculate. It was the only thing I had. What's your assessment? I asked. David took out his tablet. He showed me comparables, similar apartments in the area, recent sale prices. I'd say we can list it on the market at $380,000. Maybe we get offers up to $400,000 if we find the right buyer. I felt something expand in my chest. Freedom. That was freedom. How long would it take to sell? David smiled. In this area, with these conditions, I estimate between 3 and 6 weeks. I signed the contract that same afternoon. David took more professional photos. We made a virtual tour. He wrote a description that made my modest apartment sound like a hidden treasure. And maybe it was. Maybe I had been sitting on a treasure all this time and was so busy being invisible that I never noticed. We'll upload it tomorrow to all the platforms, David said as he left. Get ready to receive calls. I closed the door. I leaned against it. And I laughed. I laughed alone in my empty living room. A laugh that came from somewhere deep inside that I had forgotten existed. I was doing it. I was really doing it. It wasn't an abstract plan. It was real, and it was mine. That night I received a text from Matthew. Mom, are you okay? We haven't heard from you. I read it 3 times. I looked for some trace of genuine concern, of real interest. I didn't find it. It was the kind of message you send out of obligation, out of protocol, to be able to say you checked the box. I responded simply. I'm fine. Busy with some personal things. He wrote back immediately. What things? I took 20 minutes to reply. Before, I would have answered in seconds. I would have explained everything. I would have indirectly asked for permission to have my own life. But now it was different. Just my things. Nothing urgent. How is Lily? I changed the subject. He replied with a photo of Lily at the park. With the other grandmother. Of course, I replied with a heart emoji. Nothing else. I put the phone down and went on with my night. I made dinner for myself. Pasta with vegetables. White wine. I sat on the small balcony and ate slowly, savoring it. How long since I savored my own food? The calls started on the 3rd day. David was right. My apartment generated immediate interest. 5 people wanted to see it. We scheduled appointments. I cleaned. I organized. I dressed up nicely to receive the visitors. The first couple were young, newlyweds. They walked through the apartment with bright eyes. It's perfect, she said. Exactly what we were looking for. They made an offer of $360,000. Low, David recommended waiting. I waited. The second visit was a single man, investor. He looked at everything coldly. Offered $350,000. That's my final offer, he said. I told him I'd think about it. I didn't think about it. The third visit was a woman my age. A widow, too. She was looking for something smaller after selling her big house. We sat down to have coffee. We talked. She told me her story. It resembled mine. Dead husband, absent children, life on pause. I need to start over, she said. I understood her perfectly. She offered $375,000, cash. Quick closing. I said yes. We signed papers a week later. The process was surprisingly fast. She paid cash. I asked for 60 days to move out. She agreed. David was happy. It was a perfect sale, Miss Patricia. Do you have somewhere to move? I smiled. Not yet, but I will soon. That same afternoon I started looking seriously. I visited 3 apartments. The first was dark. The second was in bad shape. The third was perfect. Small. 1 bedroom, modern kitchen, new bathroom, laminate flooring, large windows. In a building with security. Quiet area. 40 minutes by subway from where Matthew lived. Far enough. It cost $190,000. I made an offer of $185,000. They accepted. I signed. In 3 weeks, I had sold my previous life and bought a new one. And Matthew knew nothing. Yet, I started packing slowly. Each box was a decision. What was I taking to my new life? What was I leaving behind? Matthew's childhood books. They stayed. His school trophies. They stayed. The photos where he smiled and I appeared blurry in the background. They stayed. I packed only what was mine. My clothes, my books, my few remaining jewels, my documents, my laptop, the essentials. Everything else was ballast. It was dead weight from a life that no longer fit me. I hired a moving company. Small, discreet, just the basics. I told them. They looked at the apartment. You sure? There's a lot of stuff here. I looked around. 40 years of stuff. I'm sure. Only what I marked with green tape. It was less than half. 2 weeks after the confrontation, Matthew called. He didn't text. He called. It was Sunday afternoon. I was packing books. I saw his name on the screen. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Hi, son. My voice came out calm, neutral. Mom, we need to talk. Can you come over tomorrow? Something in his tone alerted me. It wasn't casual. It was urgent, but urgent in that contained way. Like when you need something but don't want to seem desperate. What do you need to talk about? I asked. Brief silence. Better in person. Can you come? Before, I would have run. I would have canceled everything. I would have arrived in 2 hours asking what was wrong, but not now. Tomorrow I can't. I have things to do. It was true. I had an appointment with the lawyer to finalize papers. What things? There it was again. That question. As if I needed to justify my time. Personal things. Matthew, is it urgent, or can it wait? Another silence. It's important. Is someone sick? Did something bad happen? No. No one is sick. But we need to talk. Then it can wait. How about Wednesday? I heard him take a deep breath. He was frustrated. Good. Let him feel what it was like not to be a priority. Fine. Wednesday. At 6. At 7, I said. I have things until 6:30. Lie. I had nothing. But I wasn't going to run anymore. I wasn't going to be immediately available. I wasn't his instant solution anymore. Fine. At 7. He hung up. He didn't say I love you. He didn't say take care. Just hung up. I stared at the phone. I knew what was coming. I felt it in the tone of his voice. They needed something. Money, probably. Or help with Lily. Or some big favor that required me to put my life aside again. But this time was different. This time I had a plan. And nothing and no one was going to derail it. I kept packing. I found an old box in the back of the closet. I opened it. Letters. Letters Matthew wrote me when he was a child. Mom, you are the best in the world. I love you, Mom. When I grow up, I'm going to buy you a house. I read them all. I felt something tighten in my throat, but I didn't cry. That child grew up, and the man he became told me I would always be last. A child's words aren't contracts. They are innocence. They are moments. They are before the world teaches them to prioritize other things. I closed the box. I put it in the pile of things that were staying. Not with anger, with acceptance, with that clean sadness that comes when you finally let go of something that was never yours to begin with. Wednesday arrived. I dressed up nicely. Not too much. Just enough to look like someone who has their life under control. Black slacks, white blouse, comfortable shoes, hair pulled back, light makeup. I looked in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was different from 3 weeks ago. There was something in her eyes, something solid, something unbreakable. I took my purse. Inside I carried documents. The papers from the sale of the apartment, the papers from the purchase of the new one. Just in case I needed physical proof that my life had already changed. I left with time to spare. I took the subway. I arrived at their house at 7:03. I rang the bell. Matthew opened. He looked tired, tense. "Come in, Mom." I entered. Brittany was in the living room. She also looked tense. Lily wasn't there. They had sent her to the other grandmother. Of course, whatever they needed to tell me, they didn't want witnesses. I sat down. I looked at them. I waited. And in that uncomfortable silence before they spoke, I knew exactly what was coming. And I knew exactly what I was going to answer. Matthew sat across from me, Brittany beside him. They both looked at me with that expression I knew well, need disguised as casual conversation. "Mom, thanks for coming," Matthew started. I nodded. "I didn't say you're welcome. I didn't say I always come. Not anymore. You want something to drink?" Brittany asked. Her voice sounded sweet. Too sweet. "No thanks. I'm fine." Silence. Matthew rubbed his hands together, a sign of nervousness. I knew it since he was a child. That gesture meant he had to say something difficult. "Mom, we have a situation." I waited. I let the silence stretch out. Before, I would have jumped to ask what was wrong, to offer help before they asked. Now I just waited. "It's about the business," Matthew continued. "The project Brittany and I invested in. I knew about that project. A gourmet coffee shop. They had talked about it 6 months ago. With excitement, with big plans, with dreams of expanding. What about the business?" I asked. My voice sounded neutral. Brittany leaned forward. "Things didn't go as we expected. We had problems with the partner. Legal problems. And now?" She stopped, looked at Matthew. He took a breath. "We have debt. Mom, big debt. $45,000 that we have to pay in 3 weeks, or we lose everything." There it was. The number. The urgency. The trap disguised as trust. "I understand," I said. "Nothing else." Matthew blinked. "You understand?" he repeated. "Yes, I understand you have a financial problem." I waited. Brittany bit her lip. "Patricia, we need help. We've knocked on every door. The banks won't lend us anymore. My family already helped us with $20,000, but they don't have any more. And we thought maybe you." She stopped. Didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. "You thought maybe I would have $45,000 tucked away." I completed for her. Matthew nodded. "I know it's a lot, Mom. I know. But we're desperate. If we don't pay, we lose the entire investment. We lost $90,000, all our savings." I leaned back on the sofa. I looked at both of them. I saw real desperation in their eyes. But I also saw something else. I saw expectation. The certainty that I would say yes, because I always said yes, because I was Mom, the grandma. "The solution. And how did you think I would have that amount?" I asked. Matthew perked up, as if my question was a sign I was considering helping. "Well, you have your apartment. Could you take out a home equity loan? Or sell it? Or sell my apartment?" I repeated. Brittany intervened quickly. "Not necessarily sell it. Just use the equity to get a loan. We would pay the monthly payments. It's just to get out of this emergency." The payments. They would pay the payments. Just like all the previous promises. Like when Matthew borrowed money for the car 10 years ago and paid me only 6 months. Like when Brittany needed money for the design course and never paid me back $1. Promises that evaporated as soon as they got what they needed. "Let me understand this correctly," I said slowly. You invested all your money in a business that failed. Brittany's family already put in $20,000. And now you want me to risk my apartment, my only asset, to bail you out of the problem. Matthew looked uncomfortable. Don't put it like that, Mom. We're not asking you to risk it. Just to help us. We're family. Family? That word. The same word they used to put me in last place. The same word they now pulled out as a shield when they needed me. Family, I repeated. My voice remained calm. But there was something new in it. Something sharp. 3 weeks ago, you told me Brittany's family would always come first, that I would always be last. Remember? The atmosphere changed. Matthew went rigid. Mom, that was a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? I looked him hard in the face. You were very clear. You told me exactly what my place was in your life. The last place. Brittany agreed. There was nothing to misunderstand. Brittany raised her hands. Patricia, we were talking about general priorities. We didn't mean we don't love you. Let's not talk about love, I said. Let's talk about facts. Let's talk about the last 5 years. How many times was I the last priority? How many times did you call me only when you needed something? How many of my birthdays did you forget? How many of Lily's events did you exclude me from? Let's talk about that. Heavy silence. Matthew looked at the floor. Brittany looked at her hands. No one spoke. Because there was no defense. Only facts. Facts they had ignored because it was convenient. So, Matthew said finally, you're not going to help us. His voice sounded hurt, as if I were the one being unfair. I took a deep breath. This was the moment I had been waiting for without knowing it for decades. No, I said simply. I am not going to help you. Matthew stood up. What? Are you serious? Completely serious. Brittany also stood up. Patricia, please, think about it. He's your son. She's your granddaughter. If we lose everything, where are we going to live? That, I said, standing up too, is not my responsibility. You are adults. You made adult decisions. Now you face adult consequences. Matthew stepped closer. Mom, I'm asking you for help. Are you really going to let me fall? Something in his tone made me angry. That tone of a child. That tone he used to manipulate me since he learned to speak. I am not letting you fall, I said firmly. You made bad financial decisions. You invested without a safety net, without a plan B. And now you want me to pay for your mistakes. Just like always, but not this time. Brittany crossed her arms. I can't believe how selfish you're being. It's your family. My family, I repeated, told me 3 weeks ago that I was the last priority. Now you need money, and suddenly I'm important. Do you see the contradiction? No one answered. Besides, I continued, I don't have the money available anymore. Matthew frowned. What do you mean? I took the papers out of my purse. I put them on the coffee table. I sold my apartment 2 weeks ago. The silence was absolute. Matthew picked up the papers. He read them. His face went from confusion to shock. You sold the apartment? When? Why? Because I decided it was time to live for myself, I answered. I bought a smaller, modern apartment. I invested the rest of the money for my future. For my travels, for my life, the life I postponed for 40 years while putting you first. Brittany went pale. You invested the money? Everything. Not everything. I left an emergency fund. For my emergencies, not for others. Matthew dropped the papers. I can't believe this. When were you going to tell us? Why would I have to tell you? I asked. Do you tell me every financial decision you make? No. Because we're independent adults. Well, so am I. Matthew ran his hands through his hair. Mom, this is pure selfishness. That word. Selfishness. The same word used to control women who finally choose to live. No, I said with a steady voice. This is self-love. This is recognizing my value. This is stopping being the constant solution to problems I didn't cause. I put my purse on my shoulder. I wish you luck with your situation. I hope you find a solution. But that solution does not include my money, nor my apartment, nor my future. I walked toward the door. Matthew followed me. Mom, if you leave now, if you leave us like this, you're going to destroy our relationship. I stopped. turned, looked him in the eye. Into those eyes I had known since he was born. "Son," I said softly. Our relationship was already destroyed. Only I hadn't accepted it until now. You said it clearly. I am last. And the last ones don't rescue the first ones. That's how it works. I opened the door. "When you're ready to treat me like a real priority, not like an emergency bank, we can talk. Until then, take care." I walked out. I closed the door. I walked down the stairs. And I didn't look back. My hands were shaking on the subway ride back. Not from fear, not from guilt. They were shaking from pure adrenaline. I had just done something I never imagined possible. I had said no to my son. I had set real boundaries. I had shown him that I was no longer the woman they could use and discard at their convenience. The train car was full, people coming back from work, tired, looking at their phones, living their lives, and me there, among strangers, feeling like I had just been born. As if the 66 years before had been a long rehearsal, and finally the real show was starting. My phone rang. "Matthew." I declined the call. It rang again. I declined again. Then the texts arrived, one after another. "Mom, please answer. We need to talk calmly. We can't end it like this. Brittany is crying. Think of Lily." That last message made me squeeze the phone. Think of Lily, the final weapon, the ultimate guilt trip. But it didn't work anymore, because thinking of Lily also meant asking myself, who thought of me all these years? I arrived at my apartment. The apartment that was no longer mine. In 3 weeks I would have to hand it over. The packed boxes reminded me there was no turning back, and I didn't want to turn back. I made tea. I sat on the balcony. The city shone below, thousands of lights, thousands of lives, each with their own dramas, their own decisions, their own silent battles. I was just one more. But for the first time in decades, my battle wasn't against myself. It was for myself. The phone kept ringing all night. Matthew. Brittany. Then an unknown number. Probably Brittany's mother. I didn't answer anything. I turned off the phone. I slept deeply, without pills, without anxiety, without that weight in my chest that accompanied me every night. I slept like I hadn't slept in years. And when I woke up, the sun was coming through the window with a different clarity. The following days were a test. Matthew kept calling. He left long voicemails. "Mom, I know you're angry, but this is serious. We can lose everything. Are you really going to let that happen?" Another message. "I talked to Uncle Mark. He told me you're being ridiculous, that a mother doesn't do this to her son." My brother-in-law. Of course Matthew ran to find allies, to create pressure. But Uncle Mark hadn't called me in 3 years either. His opinion was worth exactly nothing. I deleted the messages without finishing listening to them. Brittany also wrote. A long text, full of manipulation disguised as vulnerability. "Patricia, I know we made mistakes. We all make mistakes. But abandoning us in the worst moment says a lot about who you really are. Lily asks for you. It hurts her not to see you. But I guess your pride is more important than your granddaughter." I read that message 3 times. I looked for every phrase designed to hurt, to generate guilt, to make me feel small and bad. Years ago it would have worked. I would have run crying to apologize, to give the money, to sacrifice myself again to prove I was good. But now I saw the manipulation. Clear, obvious, pathetic. I replied simply, "Lily has always been welcome in my life. You decided to distance her. Don't project your decisions onto me. And no, it's not pride, it's dignity. Learn the difference." I blocked her number. I didn't need more messages. I didn't need more attempts to make me feel guilty for finally choosing myself. Moving day was approaching. I hired the small company. They came to pack the last of it. They looked at the marked boxes. "Sure it's just this?" asked the foreman. I looked at everything I was leaving. Furniture, old appliances, memories that no longer served me. "Sure, the rest stays." "And what do we do with what stays?" I thought for a moment. "Donate it. To some family that needs it." Moving day arrived. It was Saturday. Gray, cold, perfect for closing chapters. The movers loaded quickly. I supervised with a coffee in hand. The woman who bought the apartment arrived early. She brought flowers. "For your new home," she said, handing them to me. I smiled. How ironic. Farewell flowers that were actually welcome flowers. We signed the last papers. I handed her the keys. "I hope you're very happy here," I told her. She smiled. "I will be. This place has good energy." Good energy. Maybe now, after I cleared out all the accumulated sadness, all the unrequited sacrifice, all the accepted invisibility, I walked out of the building for the last time. I didn't look back. I didn't cry. I just walked toward the moving truck. Forward, always forward. My new apartment was the complete opposite. Modern, bright, light flooring, white walls, huge windows, kitchen with new appliances, bathroom with a large shower, only one bedroom, perfect for me. Just for me. The movers unloaded everything in 2 hours. I tipped them generously. They left, and I was left alone in my new space, in my new life. I unpacked slowly. Everything found its place. Books on the new shelf, clothes in the closet, photos on the walls. But not the old photos, new ones, photos of landscapes I had bought online. Mountains, beaches, places I would soon visit. I hung the last one and stepped back. This was my space, my territory, my refuge. No one would enter here with demands, with expectations, with needs that I had to solve. This was my fortress, and the doors would only open for those who treated me with respect. That night, in my new bed, in my room, I did the math. Moving expenses and new furniture, $15,000. I had $170,000 left from the sale, plus the $95,000 I had saved. Total, $265,000. I invested $200,000 in a mixed fund, conservative but with growth. I would have $65,000 in backup, plus my pension of $1,200 a month. Enough. More than enough. Then I opened the travel site, that Machu Picchu tour I had saved. 15 days, $3,200, included flights, hotels, meals, guides. Departure in 6 weeks. There was space. I took a deep breath. And I bought it. Just like that. Without overthinking. Without asking permission. Without consulting anyone. $3,200 on my future. On my happiness. On me. The confirmation arrived in my email. "Thank you for your purchase, Patricia. Your adventure begins soon." Adventure. What a beautiful word. 66 years old, and finally I would have an adventure. Not the adventure of sacrifice. Not the adventure of raising a son alone. Not the adventure of surviving, but the adventure of living, of existing as a whole person, of discovering who Patricia was when no one needed anything from her. I printed the itinerary. I put it on the fridge with a magnet. Every day I would see it. Every day I would remember that my life had changed, that I had changed, that I would never be the last priority again. I went to bed. The mattress was firm, comfortable. The sheets smelled new. Everything smelled new, like possibility, like freedom. I closed my eyes, and for the second consecutive night, I slept in peace, without guilt, without fear, without that voice whispering that I was selfish, because I finally understood something. Taking care of myself wasn't selfishness. It was survival. It was justice. It was self-love after decades of misdirected love. Sunday I woke up late, almost 10. How long had it been since I slept in? I made breakfast calmly. Eggs, toast, strong coffee, orange juice. I sat in my small dining nook and ate slowly, looking out the window, watching the park below, people running, families walking, dogs playing, normal life, simple life, beautiful life. My phone, which I had turned back on, had 27 messages. I didn't read them. Not yet. I finished my breakfast, washed the dishes, got dressed, went out for a walk. I explored my new neighborhood. There was a bookstore on the corner, a coffee shop 2 blocks down, a fruit market on Saturdays, a park with walking paths, all new, all to discover. I went into the coffee shop, ordered another coffee, sat by the window. And there, in that place where no one knew me, where I wasn't anyone's mom or anyone's grandma, where I was just Patricia, I smiled. I smiled because finally, after so long, I was exactly where I needed to be. In first place, in my own life. 2 weeks of silence passed. 2 weeks where Matthew didn't call. Brittany didn't either. It was as if they finally understood I wouldn't change my mind. Or maybe they were looking for another solution, another person to use. I didn't care. I was busy building my new life. I signed up for pottery classes at the community center near my apartment. I always wanted to work with clay. I always postponed that desire because how was I going to spend time and money on something so frivolous when Matthew might need me? But now I had time, I had money, and I had permission. My own permission. The class was Tuesdays and Thursdays in the afternoon. There were 8 of us, all over 60, all with similar stories, absent children, dead partners, lives put on pause. The teacher's name was Sarah. She was 72, strong hands, kind smile. Clay doesn't judge, she said the first day. It only responds to your touch. It's honest. If you're tense, it breaks. If you're relaxed, it flows. I liked that philosophy. My first piece was a disaster, a deformed plate that cracked in the kiln. But I didn't care. I tried again. And again. By the 3rd class, I managed a small bowl. Imperfect, but mine. I painted it green. Hope green. New life green. I took it home and put it in my kitchen. There. Visible. A reminder that I could create things with my hands. That I didn't only exist to solve other people's problems. I also joined a book club. They met Wednesdays at night in the bookstore on the corner. We read 1 book a month, discussed, debated, drank wine and ate cheese. There were 10 women, all brilliant, all with strong opinions. I felt intimidated the first night. It had been so long since I had deep conversations, so long since I talked about ideas instead of obligations, but they welcomed me with warmth. Welcome, Patricia. What brings you to our group? I'm rebuilding my life, I said honestly. They nodded. They all understood without needing long explanations. The book that month was about a woman who left everything to live on an island. Fiction. But it felt real. Too real. When it was my turn to share opinions, I said, I think sometimes you need to lose everything to find yourself. A woman on the other side of the table, Susan, looked at me intensely. Did that happen to you? I hesitated. But something in the safe environment made me speak. Yes. A month ago, my son told me I would always be his last priority. I sold my apartment, I invested in myself, and when he asked me for $45,000 to save him from his bad decisions, I told him no. Silence, then applause, slow at first, then louder. Bravo, Susan said. That takes courage. It wasn't courage, I admitted. It was survival. The best courage always is, she replied. That night I made friends. Real friends, not acquaintances out of obligation. Chosen friends. My phone rang on a Tuesday night, 3 weeks after the confrontation. Unknown number. I answered out of curiosity. Patricia. It was a woman's voice. Older. Yes. Who is this? It's Linda, Brittany's mother. Ah, the matriarch, the favorite grandma, the one who always had the place I never had. What do you need? I asked coldly. I need to speak with you about Matthew and Brittany. About what is happening. I know what is happening, I said. They told me. They made bad decisions. They have consequences. Linda sighed. Patricia, I know my daughter and your son have treated you poorly. I know, but they are young. They made mistakes. Are you really going to let them sink? Young. Matthew was 42, Brittany, 40. They weren't children. I'm not sinking them, I replied. They sank themselves. I just refused to jump in the water with them. Linda paused. Brittany told me you sold your apartment, that you have money invested. My money. My decision, I said firmly. Are you really going to be that selfish? There it was again. That word, selfish, the favorite weapon to control women. Linda, with all due respect, you don't know me. You don't know what I've sacrificed. You don't know how many times I made myself invisible so they could shine. You don't know how many birthdays I spent alone, how many tears I swallowed, how many times I was the last priority. So don't come calling me selfish for finally choosing myself. Silence on the other end. They could lose their house, she said finally, her voice softer, more real. I know. And I'm sorry. But that is not my responsibility. You already helped with $20,000. I contributed 40 years of sacrifice. I've given enough. What about Lily? She is innocent in all this. Lily has always been welcome in my life, but you all decided to distance her. You turned me into the grandma of last resort. Don't blame anyone else for that. Linda sighed deeply. Okay. I understand. Just wanted to try. She hung up. I stared at the phone. I felt something, not guilt, something softer. Pity. Pity for Matthew and Brittany, who really could lose everything. But pity wasn't enough to make me change my mind. Pity didn't pay for 40 years of being invisible. I put the phone away. I continued with my evening. I was reading the book for the group, a novel about reinvention, about women finding strength in the second half of their lives. I felt seen on every page. The next day, a text arrived from Matthew. I didn't expect it. Weeks of silence had passed, and I thought they had moved on. Mom, I need you to know something. We are going to lose the house. The bank starts foreclosure next week. Lily is going to have to change schools. Brittany is devastated. Hope you can sleep soundly knowing that. I read the message 3 times. I looked for guilt in my chest. I didn't find it. I found sadness. Sadness that things had reached this point, but not guilt. I replied after an hour. I am sorry you are going through this. Truly. But decisions have consequences. You decided to invest without a backup. You decided to risk your stability. I decided to protect mine. I hope this experience teaches you something valuable. He didn't reply. I didn't expect him to. I blocked his number too. Not out of anger, out of peace, because every message was an attempt at manipulation, to make me feel responsible for his pain, and I no longer accepted responsibilities that weren't mine. My trip was approaching. 2 weeks. I bought new clothes, good backpack, walking shoes, camera, everything necessary. Susan from the book club was also going to Peru. Different tour, different dates, but we exchanged info, recommendations. We became friends fast. Nervous? She asked me on a Wednesday after the group. A little, I admitted. I've never traveled alone. I've traveled alone 7 times, she said. It's the best thing you can do for yourself. You find yourself in ways you never imagine. How did you decide to start? I asked. Susan smiled sadly. My husband died. My kids moved far away. One day I saw myself in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman there, so I bought a ticket to Italy, alone, and I discovered I could be whole without being needed. Her words resonated. I could be whole without being needed. What a concept! What freedom! The night before my trip I slept little, not from nerves, from excitement. My suitcase was ready, my passport, my itinerary, everything perfect. I got up early, made coffee, sat on my balcony. The sun was just coming up, the city was waking up slowly, and me there, about to start an adventure that for decades I thought impossible. My phone rang. Private number, I answered. Patricia. It was Matthew. His voice sounded broken. What's wrong? I asked. Mom, I just wanted to tell you we lost the house. Officially, we're moving to a small apartment. Lily cries every night. Brittany barely speaks to me. And I just wanted you to know. Why are you calling to tell me that? I asked softly. Because I need you to understand what you caused. There it was. The final guilt, the desperate blow. Matthew, I said calmly. I didn't cause anything. You made decisions, bad decisions. And now you are living the consequences. That is not my fault. That is life. That is maturity. Something you should learn. You're my mother, he said. His voice trembled. Mothers are supposed to help. I helped for 40 years. I raised you alone. I gave you everything. And when I finally needed to be a priority, you told me I would always be last. Well, the last ones don't rescue. The last ones take care of themselves. Silence. Are you going to hang up like that? He asked. Yes, I said. Because tomorrow, I'm going on a trip. To Peru. 15 days. For me. And I'm not going to let your crisis ruin my peace. Trip? He sounded incredulous. You have money to travel, but not to help us. Exactly, I said without hesitation. Have a good trip, son. I hope when I get back you've learned something about responsibility. I hung up, turned off the phone, and got ready to leave. The airport was full. Families, couples, groups of friends, and me. Alone, with my small suitcase and my backpack. But I didn't feel alone. I felt free. Freedom has a different weight. Light, expansive. I checked in. Went through security. Waited at the gate watching people. Everyone was going somewhere. Everyone had stories. And no one knew mine. No one knew I had sold my apartment. That I had said no to my son. That I was remaking my life at 66. And that anonymity didn't hurt anymore. It was freedom. The flight left on time. I sat by the window. The plane took off. I saw my city getting small below. Everything I knew, everything I was, leaving it behind. And I felt something release in my chest. Something that had been tight for decades. Fear, obligation, guilt, all staying on the ground while I flew toward something new. We arrived in Lima after 6 hours. The heat hit me leaving the airport. Humid, intense, alive. The tour guide was waiting with a sign. Machu Picchu Group, Andean Adventure. There were 15 of us, most over 60, 3 couples, the rest solo, like me. We introduced ourselves on the bus to the hotel. A man sat next to me, tall, gray hair, kind smile. Robert, he said, extending his hand. Patricia, I replied. First time in Peru? He asked. First time traveling alone, I admitted. He smiled. Me too. Well, first time since I was widowed 3 years ago. There was something in his voice. Something honest. Something that invited speaking without masks. What brought you here? I asked. Robert looked out the window. My kids told me I should move on. Stop living in the past. So I bought this trip, to see if they might be right. And? Don't know yet. But the first step is being here. That's something. The hotel was modern, clean. My room overlooked a park. I unpacked slowly, hung my clothes, arranged my things. This room would be my home for 3 nights before leaving for Cusco. I showered, changed, went down to the welcome dinner. The guide, a young man named Luis, explained the itinerary. Tomorrow Lima, day after Cusco, then the Sacred Valley, and finally Machu Picchu. Each word sounded like a promise, like adventure, like life. I ate with Robert and 2 women from the group. We talked about everything, about our lives, about our children, about our losses. Robert had 2 daughters. They lived far away. They called him once a month. It's enough, he said. But his eyes said something else. One of the women, 68, told how her 3 sons had asked her to sell her house to distribute the inheritance while she was alive. I told them no, that my house was mine until I decided. They got mad, stopped talking to her for 6 months, then they came back. But it wasn't the same. I listened to every story. I saw reflected parts of mine, children who took, parents who gave, until there was nothing left to give. And then came the complaint, the accusation of selfishness, the abandonment disguised as disappointment. But here, at this table, in this foreign country, among strangers becoming friends, there was no judgment, only understanding. That night, I slept deeply. No dreams, no worries, just pure rest. Lima welcomed us with sun the next day. We visited the historic center, the Plaza de Armas, the cathedral, colonial palaces. Luis told us stories, conquest, resistance, reinvention. Peru has been destroyed and rebuilt many times, he said, but it always rises. It always finds a way to be new without forgetting the old. I liked that idea. Reinventing oneself without forgetting, without denying, just integrating and moving forward. We had ceviche for lunch. Fresh, spicy, delicious. Robert sat across from me. How do you feel? He asked. Alive, I answered honestly. For the first time in a long time, alive. The flight to Cusco was short. The city welcomed us with mountain cold, thin air. Breathing took effort. Luis gave us coca tea. For the soroshi, he explained. Altitude sickness. The body needed to adapt. We spent the afternoon resting. I went out to walk alone. The streets were cobblestone, ancient, full of history. Women sold colorful textiles. Men played Andean music. Tourists walked amazed. And me among them, anonymous, free. I bought an alpaca shawl. Purple. I put it on. Felt the soft weight on my shoulders. kept walking, entered a small church, candles lit, sacred silence. I sat on a back bench. I'm not especially religious, but there was something in that space, something that invited reflection. I closed my eyes, thought about Matthew, about Lily, about Brittany, about everything I left behind. I felt sadness, but not guilt. Only sadness for what could have been and wasn't, for the family I imagined and never existed. I let go of that sadness, released it like smoke, rising, disappearing. That night we had dinner as a group again. Robert looked for me, sat next to me. We talked deeper. He told me about his wife. 40 years of marriage, cancer, fast, devastating. I thought I would die with her, he admitted. The first few months, I wanted to die. What changed? I asked. One day my youngest daughter came, found me in pajamas, unshowered, the house a mess, and she said, "Dad, Mom wouldn't have wanted this. She would have wanted you to live." She was right. I told him my story, summarized, but honest. Matthew, Brittany, the ultimatum, selling the apartment, the rejection, the trip. Robert listened without interrupting. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "You did the right thing," he said. "You think?" There was a part of me that still doubted, completely. Children need to learn that parents are people too, with boundaries, with their own lives. If they don't learn, they become emotional vampires, taking, never giving. Emotional vampires. What a perfect phrase. The Sacred Valley left us speechless. Green mountains, ancient ruins, impossible Inca terraces. Luis explained how the Incas built everything without modern technology. With knowledge, with effort, with vision, he said. We walked through Ollantaytambo, climbed stone stairs. The thin air made every step an effort. But I got to the top. I looked at the valley from above. Infinite, eternal, beautiful. Robert arrived behind me. "Worth it, right?" he asked between breaths. "Every step," I replied. That night at the hotel in Aguascalientes, the base town for Machu Picchu, I checked my phone. I had kept it off almost all week. I turned it on. 52 messages, most from Matthew, some from Brittany, 2 from unknown numbers. I didn't read them. I deleted them all without opening. Whatever they said didn't matter anymore. It had no power over me. I turned off the phone again, put it in my suitcase, and got ready for the most important day of the trip, Machu Picchu, the lost city. We left at 4 in the morning. Dark, cold, bus snaking up the mountain, 30 minutes of tight curves. We arrived when the sun was just starting to paint the sky. We entered, walked along stone paths, and then we saw it. Machu Picchu emerging from the mist. Mountains all around, clouds below. Absolute silence broken only by the wind. There are no words. There is no way to describe that moment, when something so big, so ancient, so beautiful, reminds you how small your problems are, how insignificant your pain is compared to the eternity of the mountains. I cried, standing there in front of that wonder. I cried everything I didn't cry during the conflict, everything I kept in, everything I swallowed. I cried clean. I cried free. Robert was nearby. He didn't say anything, just put a hand on my shoulder. Silent solidarity, wordless understanding. We spent 4 hours there, walking, exploring, feeling. Luis told us stories about the Incas, about abandonment and rediscovery, about how sometimes the most valuable things get lost for centuries until someone finds them again. I felt found. I was Machu Picchu, lost for decades under the overgrowth of sacrifice, of service, of invisibility, and now rediscovered, by myself, for myself. At noon we started the descent. Tired, happy, whole. Robert walked beside me. "Patricia," he said suddenly. "Yes? I would like to keep getting to know you. After the trip. If you want." I looked at him. I saw a good man. An honest man. A man who was also reinventing himself. "I would like that," I replied. And I smiled. Because life, I discovered there in the mountains of Peru, always offers new beginnings. You just have to have the courage to take them. The trip ended too fast. 15 days that felt like minutes. The last day in Lima, we exchanged numbers with the group, hugs, promises to keep in touch. Robert and I stayed until the end. "When do you go back home?" he asked. "Day after tomorrow," I replied. "Me too. I live in the city, not so far from where you told me you bought your apartment." I smiled. What a coincidence. Or maybe not. Maybe the universe was finally conspiring in my favor. "I'd like to take you to dinner. When you're ready. No pressure," he said. His eyes were honest. No hidden agenda. No need disguised as politeness. Just genuine interest. "I would love that," I answered. "Give me a few days to land." Literally and emotionally. He laughed. "Take all the time you need." We said goodbye with a hug. Long, warm, full of possibility. The flight back was different from the way there. I was returning, but not to the same thing. I was returning to a new life, to a new apartment, to a new version of myself. We landed at night. The city shone below. My city, but I didn't feel small in it anymore. I took a cab home, my new home. I opened the door. Everything was as I left it, clean, tidy, mine. I dropped the suitcase, threw myself on the sofa, and breathed. I had done something I never imagined possible. I had traveled alone. I had met wonderful people. I had cried at Machu Picchu. I had let go of decades of pain. And I had met a man who maybe, just maybe, could be something important. I didn't need him to be, but I was open to the possibility, and that openness was new. It was growth. It was life. The next day, I unpacked slowly, washed clothes, organized photos on my computer, hundreds of photos, mountains, ruins, sunsets, selfies where you could see real happiness on my face, that happiness that comes from within, not from external validation, not from being needed, but from being whole. I turned on my phone. 112 messages, most from numbers I didn't recognize, some from Matthew, 3 from Brittany, 2 from Linda, 1 from Uncle Mark, all wanting something, all with urgencies. I deleted everything without reading. If it was really urgent, they would have found another way to contact me. I called Susan from the book club. "Patricia, how was it?" Her voice sounded excited. "Transformative," I said honestly. "I need to tell you everything. Coffee tomorrow." Of course. At 10 at the usual place. We met at the coffee shop near my apartment. I told her everything. The trip, the ruins, the group, Robert. Susan listened with bright eyes. "Sounds perfect," she said. It was. It really was. "And what happened with your son?" she asked carefully. "I don't know. I deleted all his messages without reading." Susan nodded. "And how do you feel about that?" I thought before answering. At peace. For the first time in a long time. At peace. "That's all that matters," she said. She told me about the book club, the new book they were going to read, the discussions I missed. "Wednesday we meet. We expect you." "I'll be there," I promised. And I meant it. This life, these friends, this space, it was mine. And I wasn't going to sacrifice it for anything. That afternoon the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole. Matthew. My heart raced. Not from excitement, from alert. How did he know my address? Of course. Public records. The purchase of the apartment was public information. I took a deep breath. Opened the door. "Matthew." My voice came out neutral. "Mom." He looked bad. Tired. Thinner. Red eyes. "How did you know where I live?" I asked. "I searched public records. I needed to see you." "Why?" I didn't invite him in. We stood in the doorway. "Because I miss you? Because I need to talk to you? Because you're my mother and we can't go on like this?" I felt something soften, but not enough. "Matthew, I told you when you were ready to treat me like a priority, not like a bank, we could talk." "I know. And you're right. You were right about everything." His words surprised me. "I'm sorry. You were right. I treated you badly. Brittany treated you badly. We used you. We made you invisible. And when you finally set boundaries, we got mad instead of reflecting." I said nothing. Waited. We lost the house. We moved to a small apartment. Lily changed schools. Brittany and I almost got divorced. He paused. And in the middle of all that, I realized something. My whole life, you were always there. Always. And I never, not once, asked you what you needed. I never asked if you were okay, if you were happy, if you had dreams. I just assumed your dream was to serve me. And that was cruel. I felt tears wanting to come out. But I held them back. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because I've been in therapy. Brittany and I, couples therapy, individual therapy. And my therapist asked me about you, about our relationship. And when I started talking, when I started listing everything you did for me and how little I did for you, I broke. I saw myself as what I was, a selfish son who took his mother's sacrifice as a given, as something deserved, and it wasn't. Matthew had tears in his eyes. Mom, I didn't come to ask for money. I didn't come to ask for favors. I came to ask for forgiveness. Genuine forgiveness. No expectations, no agenda. Just forgiveness. I looked at him. Really looked at him. I saw the boy I raised, the man he became, the son who hurt me, and the human being who seemed, finally, to be waking up. Matthew, I said softly, I appreciate you coming. I appreciate your words. But words are easy. Actions are what matter. I need to see real change. I need to see consistent effort. I can't go back to what we were just because you had a revelation in therapy. He nodded. I understand. I don't expect us to go back to how we were before. That before was toxic. For you. I know that now. And what do you expect? I asked. I expect to be able to start over. From zero. Know you as a person. Not as mom who fixes everything. But as Patricia. As a whole woman with her own life. Those words I never thought I'd hear. I need time, I said finally. Time to process this. To see if it's real or if it's desperation disguised as change. It's real, he said. But I understand you need to see it. I'll take all the time you need. He gave me an envelope. This is for you. Don't open it now. Open it when you're ready. I took the envelope. Thanks for coming, Matthew. For being honest. Thanks for listening. He left. Walked down the stairs slowly. I watched him go from my window. I closed the door. Stood there, holding the envelope, trembling slightly. This I didn't expect. I didn't expect a real apology. I didn't expect acknowledgement. I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, handwritten. It started, Mom, Patricia, woman who gave me everything. I read it completely. 3 pages, detailing every memory, every sacrifice he remembered, every time I was invisible, every time he should have valued me and didn't. It ended. I don't expect you to forgive me quickly. I only hope for the opportunity to show you I can be better, that I can be the son you always deserved. I love you, Matthew. I cried. I cried hard. I cried clean. Not from sadness, from liberation, from validation, from finally hearing the words I needed for decades. But I also cried knowing that words weren't enough, that I needed to see facts, real change, sustained effort. I couldn't go back to being the mom who solves everything. That woman died. Another was born. And this new Patricia had standards, had boundaries, had her own life. I saved the letter, put it in a drawer, didn't throw it away, kept it as evidence, as a starting point, as a possibility, but not as a solution. Robert called that night. How was your day? He asked. Complicated. My son came over. I told him everything. The visit, the apology, the letter. Robert listened without interrupting. What are you going to do? He asked at the end. Wait. Watch. Protect myself. And, in the meantime, keep living my life. Seems wise to me, he said. Are we still on for dinner? We're on, I confirmed. This Saturday. Perfect. We hung up. I got ready to sleep. In my bed. In my apartment. In my life. With possibilities open. With wounds healing. With a bright future. Matthew had taken the first step. Maybe genuine? Maybe not? Time would tell. But, meanwhile, I would keep being the priority in my own life. I would keep taking pottery classes, attending the book club, planning my next trip, getting to know Robert, building real friendships, finally living for me. because after 66 years of being last on everyone's list, I had finally learned the most important lesson. You can't pour from an empty cup. First, you must fill yourself, and I, for the first time in my life, was full, whole, and happy. 6 months later, my life was unrecognizable, in the best sense possible. I woke up that Saturday with light coming through my window. No alarm, no urgencies, just the natural rhythm of my body telling me it was time. I stretched in my bed, smiled. Another day of mine. I made coffee, toast with jam, sat on my balcony. The morning routine I had perfected. No rush, no guilt, just present. My phone rang. Robert, good morning, beautiful. Ready for today? I smiled. We had been dating for 4 months. Slowly, no pressure. Two older people who knew real love doesn't need haste. Ready. What time are you picking me up? At 10. We're going to that craft market you wanted to visit. Perfect. I'll wait for you here. We hung up. Robert was different. Attentive without being invasive. Interested without being needy. He asked me what I thought, what I felt, what I dreamed, and he really listened to the answers, not to find how to use them, but to know me, to see me. What a revolutionary concept. My pottery class had advanced. I wasn't making deformed plates anymore. Now I made vases, large bowls, pieces I sold at the local market twice a month. Not for money, for the pride of creating something valuable with my hands. Sarah, my teacher, said I had natural talent. You should consider doing this more seriously, she suggested last week. Maybe, maybe not. For now I just enjoyed the process. The book club had become essential. Every Wednesday, without fail. This month we were reading about a woman climbing mountains in her 70s. Inspiring, real. Susan and I had become close. We had lunch together twice a week, talked about everything, about nothing, about life. She met Robert last month. I approve, she said later. He has good eyes, honest eyes. I trusted her judgment, and mine. For the first time I trusted my own judgment about people. Matthew and I had established something new. It wasn't the mother-son relationship of before. It was something different, more balanced, more real. We saw each other once a month. For coffee, for conversation, no agendas, no needs, just connection. The first time was awkward. We sat in a neutral coffee shop. Neither knew what to say. How are you? I answered honestly. I'm glad. You look different, more light. I feel light, I admitted. And you? Matthew sighed. Hard. Therapy is hard, but necessary. I'm learning a lot about myself, about us, about how I hurt the people I love. I nodded. That takes courage. You should have had that courage before, but you have it now. That counts. That first conversation lasted an hour. No tears, no drama, just two adults talking honestly. The second time was easier. He told me about his work. He had gotten a new job, better paid, more stable. Brittany was working too, part-time. Things were improving slowly. Lily asks for you, he said carefully. My heart tightened. My granddaughter. I missed her. But I didn't show it. How is she? Adjusting. The new school is good. Smaller. She says she likes it better. I'm glad. Silence. Would you like to see her? Matthew asked. I considered carefully. When you are ready for her to see me as a real grandma, not as an emergency grandma. When Brittany is ready to share without resentment, then yes. Matthew nodded. I understand. We're working on that. In therapy, Brittany is learning too. Good, I said. And I meant it. Not for them. For Lily. She deserved healthy adults around her. The third meeting, Matthew brought something. A small box. This is yours. Always was yours. I opened it. Inside were my gold bracelets, the ones I sold when he was 15. Matthew. How? I searched for months. Found the jeweler who bought them from you. He sold them to a collector. I paid him double to get them back. They don't replace what you did. They don't even come close. But I want you to have them back. I touched the bracelets. Cold, heavy, full of memory. Tears filled my eyes. Matthew, you don't have to say anything. I just want you to know that I see your sacrifice. I finally see it, and I'm never going to forget it again." The bracelets were now in my jewelry box. I looked at them sometimes, not with sadness, with pride, for the woman I was, for the woman I am, for the entire journey traveled. Brittany wrote to me 2 weeks ago. A long message, apologizing, acknowledging her part. "Patricia, I was terrible to you. I saw Matthew as a trophy I won and you as competition to eliminate. That was wrong, completely wrong. I don't expect immediate forgiveness. Just want you to know I'm working on being better. For Lily, for Matthew, for me." I replied after 3 days. "I appreciate your message. I appreciate your honesty. I'm also working on being better. Maybe we can eventually find a way to coexist with mutual respect," she replied. "I would like that. Very much. We weren't friends. Maybe we never would be. But maybe we could be civilized adults. That was enough." Lily called me a week ago. Matthew gave her my number. "Grandma?" Her voice sounded older. She was already 11. "Lily, sweetie. How are you?" "Good, Grandma. Can I see you? I miss you." My heart melted. "Of course, honey. When your parents say it's okay. We met yesterday, in a neutral park." Lily ran toward me. I hugged her tight. She had grown so much. "I missed you, Grandma." "Me too, sweetie." We spent 2 hours together. We talked. She told me about her new school, her friends, her art classes. "Dad says you take pottery classes?" she said. "Yes, I love it. Can I go with you someday?" "I would love that." Matthew and Brittany watched from afar, without interfering. When it was time to leave, Lily hugged me again. "Can I come to your new house?" "Soon," I promised. "Very soon." Because now my terms also included space for her. But healthy space. Space where I wasn't the solution. Just the grandma, the person she loved. Without conditions, without sacrifices that emptied me. Robert and I went to the market as planned. Bought crafts, ate street food, walked holding hands. "Happy?" he asked. "Very happy," I replied. That night, in my apartment, with Robert preparing dinner in my kitchen, I looked around. My space, my life, my choices. The pottery pieces on the shelf, the book club books on the table, the Machu Picchu photos on the wall, the itinerary for the next trip, to Colombia, on the fridge, all evidence of a life lived forward. A life where I was the protagonist, not the supporting character. Robert served dinner, pasta he cooked with care, wine he brought from his favorite shop. We sat down, toasted. "What are we toasting to?" he asked, smiling. "To new beginnings," I said. "To finding each other at the right time. To brave women who choose themselves," he added. We clinked glasses, drank, ate, laughed. And in that moment, surrounded by warmth and chosen company, I remembered the words I told Matthew 6 months ago, the words that changed everything. "For 40 years I was last on your list, son. Now, finally, I am first on mine." Those words were my mantra, my reminder, my truth. Matthew had grown. He had changed. He was doing the work, and I was proud. But it was no longer my responsibility to fix him. It was no longer my job to ensure he was okay while I fell apart. Now we both had responsibilities. Him with himself, me with myself. And maybe, just maybe, we could build something new, something healthy, something reciprocal. But if not, I would be fine. Because I learned the most important lesson at 66. I learned that it is never too late to choose yourself, never too late to set boundaries, never too late to say no, never too late to live the life you always deserved. I sold my apartment. I invested in myself. I traveled alone. I found new love. I recovered my granddaughter on healthy terms. I built real friendships, and finally, after decades of being invisible, I became visible. To me. And that, I discovered, was all I ever needed. Robert stayed that night. We talked late. About the future. About possibilities. About maybe moving in together eventually. No rush, with respect, with real love. When we finally fell asleep, his arm around me, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Safety. Not the safety of being needed, the safety of being valued, of being seen, of being first. And in the darkness of my room, in my chosen apartment, in my life built from scratch. I smiled, because finally I understood what it meant to be whole. I didn't need Matthew to save me. I didn't need Robert to complete me. I was already complete. They just added to what already existed. And that difference, that small but huge difference, was everything. My son's family didn't come first anymore. I came first, in my own life, finally, eternally, gloriously, first. I had just signed the papers for the most beautiful house I had ever seen in my life. It took me 65 years to save up every single dollar to buy that property with a yard and 3 spacious bedrooms. Eleanor Vance, a widow retired, but finally the owner of something truly my own. The keys felt heavy in my hand, like a promise fulfilled after decades of working at the textile factory, saving every penny I could. Tomorrow, I would move in. Tomorrow, my new life would begin in that house that smelled of fresh paint and had enormous windows that let in all the light in the world. I had personally chosen every detail, from the furniture to the beige curtains that perfectly matched the brown leather sofas I had bought on an installment plan. Everything was ready. Everything was perfect. Until the phone rang that afternoon. It was Charlotte, my only daughter, with that voice I knew all too well when she needed to ask for something. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something important regarding the new house. Come over for dinner tonight. There's something you need to know." Something in her tone made my stomach knot up. But she was my daughter. I had raised her alone after her father abandoned us when she was just 8 years old. I had given her everything I could. Maybe that's why I never learned to say no to her. I arrived at her house at 7 o'clock sharp, as always. Charlotte greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The table was set for 3, but it was just the 2 of us. "Are we expecting someone else?" I asked as I sat down. "No, Mom. I just wanted you to know that tomorrow, when you move in, you won't be alone in the house." I felt as if a bucket of cold water had been thrown over me. "What do you mean by that, Charlotte?" She poured the coffee without looking at me directly. Her hands were trembling slightly, but her voice sounded determined, almost cold. "My in-laws are going through a tough time. Linda and Robert lost their apartment. And well, Ashley, my husband's sister-in-law, just got divorced and has nowhere to stay." My heart began to beat faster. "And what does that have to do with me?" "They're going to live with you in the new house. It's all arranged. Robert is going to help you with the yard expenses, and Linda can cook for you. Ashley is very neat. She'll help you with the cleaning." I was silent for a moment that felt like an eternity. My daughter's words floated in the air like invisible daggers piercing my chest. "Charlotte, I bought that house, with my money, with my life savings." "Mom, don't be selfish. It's a 3-bedroom house. You have plenty of space." "Selfish." The words escaped my mouth before I could stop them. "I worked for 40 years to buy that house. It's my sanctuary, my place of peace." Charlotte put her cup down on the table with a sharp thud. She looked at me with a coldness I had never seen in her eyes. "Your opinion doesn't matter, Mom. It's already decided. They're arriving with me tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning. Linda already has the keys I gave her yesterday." I stood up from the chair, feeling as if the floor were moving beneath my feet. My own daughter, the girl to whom I had given everything, was taking away the only thing that was truly mine. "You gave them keys to my house without asking me?" "It's for the best for everyone, Mom. You'll see, you'll get used to it." I walked out of that house without another word. My legs trembled as I walked to the bus stop. In the reflection of the bus window, I saw an older woman with her eyes full of tears she refused to shed. But somewhere deep in my chest, something more than sadness began to grow. It was rage. It was trampled dignity. It was the silent strength of someone who has been underestimated for far too long. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my old chair, looking out the window, planning exactly what I would do the next day. By dawn, I had everything clear. I woke up with a determination I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just anger that moved me. It was something much deeper. It was the self-respect I had lost somewhere along the way. At 6 o'clock in the morning, I was already dialing numbers on my phone. The first was to the moving company. "Good morning. This is Eleanor Vance. I need to cancel the moving service scheduled for today." "Ma'am, but we already have the truck on its way. If you cancel now, you'll have to pay a penalty." "No problem. Pay it from my deposit." I knew I was losing money, but for the first time in a long time, I felt I was investing in my dignity. The second call was more difficult. It was to the furniture store where I had bought everything for the new house. Mr. Thompson, this is Eleanor Vance. I bought a complete living and dining room set last week. I need to return everything. But ma'am, the furniture has already been delivered to the address you gave us. I know. I'm on my way there with the keys. You can pick everything up this morning. I'll pay for the extra transportation. Are you sure? You'll lose 30% of the value. I am completely sure. My voice was firm, though inside I knew that furniture represented months of extra work at the factory, hours standing in front of the sewing machine, stitches that made my fingers ache at night. The third call was to the cable company. I want to cancel the installation scheduled for today at the new address. Any technical problem, ma'am? No, I just don't need it anymore. The fourth was to the air conditioning technician who was coming to install the unit I had bought on credit. Mr. Davis, I'm canceling today's installation. Mrs. Eleanor, but the unit is already paid for. It just needs to be installed. You can keep it. Consider it a bonus. One by one, I canceled every service. The internet, the landline, the gardening service I had hired to maintain the beautiful yard that had so excited me, the bottled water company that was going to supply me. I even canceled the electrician who was coming to install additional lamps. Each call was like removing a blindfold. I realized how many dreams I had invested in that house. How many sleepless nights I had spent imagining every detail, every moment I would live there. By 7:30, I had finished with all the cancellations. I made myself a strong coffee and sat down to review the house papers. All the documents were in my name. Every signature was mine. Every dollar invested came from my bank account. At 8 o'clock in the morning, I was ready. I put on my dark green dress, the one that made me feel elegant, and headed to my new house. My house that would no longer be my home. The bus ride took 40 minutes. Throughout the journey, other passengers got on and off, each with their morning routines, their jobs, their own lives that seemed more orderly than mine. An elderly woman like me was carrying bags of vegetables from the market. I wondered if she also had children who made decisions for her. When I arrived, the furniture movers were already waiting. I opened the door for them and watched them carry out, one by one, all the pieces I had chosen with so much love. The brown sofa where I planned to read in the afternoons. The dining table where I imagined hosting guests for Christmas. The king-size bed where I dreamed of sleeping peacefully after so many years of worry. Are you sure you want to take everything, ma'am? The foreman asked me. A burly man with a face that showed he understood none of what was happening. Completely sure. It's just, did you not like something? We can exchange a piece for another. No, everything was perfect. I just don't need it here anymore. It was strange to see the house emptying out, but with every piece of furniture that left, I felt lighter. As if I were shedding an illusion that was never really mine. The workers took the new refrigerator, the microwave, the washing machine, even the paintings I had bought to bring life to the walls. One of them asked if they should also take the beige curtains. Yes, take everything that isn't nailed to the wall. When they finished, the house was completely empty. Just the white walls and the echo of my footsteps resonating in the vacant rooms. I walked through each room one last time. The master bedroom where I had dreamed of having my own space. The guest room where I thought a relative might come to visit. The third room I had imagined as my small library. All empty. All echo. I sat on the dining room floor and took a piece of paper and a pen from my purse. It was the same pen with which I had signed the purchase contract just a week ago. I wrote a letter, short, but with each word chosen carefully. Charlotte, Linda, Robert, and Ashley. This house was bought with the money from my 40 years of work. Money I earned by sewing from 5 in the morning until 8 at night, skipping meals to save every penny. Money I saved by denying myself small luxuries for decades to fulfill this dream. If you wanted a free house, you should have asked me before making the decision for me. The keys are on this letter. The house is yours now. Do with it what you will. But don't count on me to finance anyone else's dreams. With all the pain in my heart, but with a clear conscience, Eleanor. How? I left the keys on the letter, in the exact center of what had been the living room. The metallic sound of the keys against the floor echoed through the empty house like a bell announcing the end of something. I walked out without looking back. I closed the front door and walked to the street where the taxi I had called was already waiting. "Where to, ma'am?" "To the city center, the Plaza Hotel." "Do you have any luggage?" "Number, I only have what I need." During the ride, I didn't cry. I had no regrets. I just felt a strange peace, like when you finish cleaning a deep wound. It hurts, but you know it was necessary. At the hotel, I asked for a simple room. I just needed a place to think clearly about what I would do with the rest of my life. The receptionist, a young girl with a kind smile, looked at me with curiosity when I paid for a full week in cash. "Are you on vacation in the city, ma'am?" "No, dear. I'm starting a new life." Her eyes lit up with a mixture of curiosity and admiration. It probably wasn't common to see a woman my age talking about starting over. "How exciting. I hope you enjoy your stay." I went up to the room and sat by the window overlooking the main square. It was a modest but clean room, with a single bed, a small desk, and a view that calmed me. People were rushing around the square, each with their own problems, their own dreams. I wondered how many of them had been betrayed by those they loved most. I opened the window to let in the fresh morning air. There was a bench under a large tree where an old man was feeding pigeons. He looked so serene, so at peace with himself. I hadn't felt that way in years. At 9:45, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Eleanor Vance?" "Yes, this is she. This is James Anderson. I'm your new neighbor. Well, your next-door neighbor." My heart sped up a bit. What could the neighbor want? "Good morning, Mr. Anderson. How can I help you?" "Ma'am, please excuse the intrusion, but something strange is happening at your house. A moving truck arrived about an hour ago, but instead of bringing things in, they're taking everything out." I smiled involuntarily. It was strange to feel that someone was concerned about me, even if it was a stranger. "Don't worry, Mr. Anderson. It's all under control." "Are you sure? Because I also saw the furniture company taking away sofas and a large table. And now there's an appliance truck." His voice sounded genuinely worried. He was an older man. You could tell by his slow, courteous tone. "It's very kind of you to be concerned." "Yes, I authorized all of that." "Ah, well. It's just that yesterday I saw you looking so excited when you were checking out the garden. I thought something bad had happened." "He saw me in the garden yesterday." "Yes, ma'am. I was watering my plants when you arrived with a notebook, writing things down. You looked so happy planning where to put the flowers." A lump formed in my throat. It was true. Yesterday afternoon I had gone to measure the garden, to imagine where I would plant the rose bushes I wanted. It had been one of the happiest moments of the last few weeks. Yes, I had many plans for that garden. "You had? You don't anymore?" There was an awkward silence. I didn't know how to explain to a stranger what had happened. "The situation changed, Mr. Anderson." "Well, Mrs. Vance, I don't meddle in other people's business. But if you need anything, I live alone in the house next door. I'm a widower, too. I know what it's like to be alone at this stage of life." His words went straight to my heart. It had been a long time since someone had spoken to me with such warmth without wanting anything in return. "That's very kind of you, Mr. Anderson. Really. By the way, ma'am, a car just pulled up with 4 people. A very upset young woman and 3 older people with suitcases." At 10:30, my phone rang again. This time it was Charlotte. "Mom, what did you do? The house is completely empty." Her voice was hysterical, furious, but there was something else. There was real panic in her tone. "Hello, Charlotte. How did the move go?" "Don't play games with me. Where's all the furniture? Where's the television?" "Linda and Robert are standing in an empty house with their suitcases." "Oh, that. I returned it all. I wasn't going to need it." "You're crazy. How could you do such a thing? Do you have any idea what it all cost?" "Of course I know. I paid for it." "Mom, you have to fix this right now. Robert already spent money on gas for the moving truck. Linda brought food to cook today. Charlotte, I don't have to fix anything. You all made a decision for me. Now you can also decide how to solve this." "This is ridiculous. You're being selfish, a bitter old woman." The words hurt more than I expected. It was my daughter talking to me like that. The little girl I had raised with so much love was now screaming at me as if I were her enemy. "Where are you? Come here immediately." I looked out the hotel window. The old man was still feeding the pigeons in the square. He looked calm, unhurried, with no one screaming at him on the phone. "I'm not coming, Charlotte. I've done my part. I bought the house. The rest is your problem." "Mom, this can't be happening. Linda is crying. She says she feels humiliated." "Charlotte, at any point, did you ask yourself how I felt?" "What do you mean?" "Did you ask yourself if I wanted to share my house? If I had worked for 40 years to have permanent house guests? If my dream was to become a free boarding house?" "Mom, don't exaggerate. It was only going to be temporary." "How long? A month? A year? Until they found jobs? And what if they didn't? Was I supposed to kick them out myself?" There was a silence on the other end of the line. "This isn't over, Mom." "You're right, it's not over. Because now I am going to decide what to do with my life. And for the first time in many years, I'm going to decide alone." "Wait, don't hang up." But I had already hung up. I turned off the phone and put it in the nightstand drawer. From the window, I saw a tour bus full of tourists arrive. They got off with cameras and maps, excited to discover the city. They laughed, took pictures, pointed at historic buildings. I wondered when was the last time I had felt that excitement for something new. I decided to go down and walk around the square. I needed fresh air and movement after that call. The square was beautiful. It had large trees that provided shade, wrought iron benches painted green, and a fountain in the center where children ran around while their mothers watched from the benches. I approached the old man feeding the pigeons. He had completely white hair and wore a well-ironed cream-colored shirt. "Good morning," I said. "Good morning, ma'am. Do you like pigeons, too?" To be honest, I've never stopped to watch them. They are very intelligent animals. Each one has its own personality. That gray one over there is very shy, and that white one with spots is the greediest of them all. I watched him feed the birds with breadcrumbs he took from a paper bag. There was something very peaceful in his movements, very deliberate. "You come here every day?" "Every day since I retired. My wife died 5 years ago, and my daughter lives in another country. At first, I came because I didn't know what to do with so much free time. Now I come because the pigeons wait for me." "You don't feel lonely?" "Sometimes. But I've learned that being alone is not the same as being lonely. When you are at peace with yourself, solitude can be very good company." His words resonated in my head like a bell. Being alone is not the same as being lonely. "May I sit for a moment?" "Of course, ma'am. What's your name?" "Eleanor. Eleanor Vance." "A pleasure, Mrs. Vance. I am James Anderson." "James Anderson?" "Yes, why?" "We've met. You called me this morning. You're my neighbor." He stared at me with wide eyes. "You are the lady from the new house? The one with the garden?" "I was. Not anymore." James stopped feeding the pigeons and looked at me attentively. "What happened, Mrs. Vance?" And for the first time since last night, I felt the urge to tell someone the whole truth. I told James everything. From the moment I signed the papers for the house to Charlotte's furious call that morning. He listened without interrupting, nodding from time to time, his eyes reflecting an understanding I hadn't found in anyone for a long time. "Mrs. Vance," he said when I finished my story, "you did the right thing. Do you really think so?" "Of course. I have 3 children, and since I was widowed, all 3 have had brilliant ideas about what I should do with my house, with my money, with my time. The oldest wants me to move into a nursing home so he can sell my house. The middle one wants me to lend him money for his business. And the youngest wants me to move in with her to take care of her children for free. And what do? I tell them no. At first, they got angry. They stopped visiting for months, but then they realized their old man wasn't a fool they could manipulate. James was right, but it hurt so much to come to that realization. It's just that Charlotte is my only daughter. I raised her alone after her father left. And for that very reason, Mrs. Vance, you gave her everything. Now she believes she has a right to everything of yours." A pigeon came close to my feet and looked at me expectantly. James gave me some crumbs. "Here, this one is named Hope. She's the bravest of them all." Feeding Hope calmed me. There was something comforting in that small act of generosity without expectations. "James, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How did you learn to be alone without being lonely?" He thought for a moment, looking towards the fountain where a young mother was chasing her little son. "I think I started to understand it when I stopped expecting others to fill my life and started to fill it myself. At first, it was hard. I was used to my day revolving around my wife, also named Hope. When she died, I didn't know what to do with myself." "And what did you do?" "I started small. I got up one day and decided to learn how to cook something other than fried eggs. Then I decided to fix the broken things in the house myself instead of calling my children. After that, I started going for walks with no particular destination." "And when did you know you were okay?" "The day I realized I could spend a whole day without looking at the phone, waiting for someone to call. The day I woke up excited about something I was going to do for myself." His words hit me deeply. It had been years since I had woken up excited about something that was just for me. "James, do you think I'm too old to start over?" "Mrs. Vance, my grandmother started learning piano at 70. She said she had been too busy raising children and grandchildren to do something for pure fun. She died at 85 playing a waltz." I smiled for the first time in days. "Really?" "Really. And you're 65. You have at least 20 years to learn piano, painting, dancing, French cooking, whatever you can think of." I was quiet for a moment, watching as Hope pecked at the crumbs around my feet. "James, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course." "My whole adult life, I dedicated myself to being the perfect mom for Charlotte. I worked, cooked, cleaned, helped her with her homework, went to school meetings. I never had time to ask myself what I liked. And now? Now I realize I don't even know what my favorite color island. I always bought clothes thinking about what was practical, not what I liked." "What color are you wearing today?" I looked at my dark green dress. "Green. Do you like it?" "Yes. It makes me feel elegant." "Then that might be a good place to start getting to know yourself." At that moment, my phone rang. It was Charlotte again. This time I didn't turn it off, but I didn't answer either. I let it ring until it stopped. "It's your daughter." "Yes." "Are you going to answer?" "Not yet. I need time to think." James nodded understandingly. "Mrs. Vance, may I give you some advice?" "Please. Don't make important decisions when you're angry, but don't make them when you're scared either. Make them when you're calm." "And how do I know when I'm calm?" "When you can think about the problem without your chest hurting." I took a deep breath. My chest still hurt when I thought about Charlotte. "Then I'm not ready yet." "There's no rush, Mrs. Vance. Time is the only thing we truly have." We sat in silence, feeding the pigeons for almost an hour. It was a comfortable silence, without pressure, without expectations. It had been years since I had experienced that feeling of peace. "James, can I ask you something else?" "As many times as you like." "Do you think I'm a bad mother for doing what I did?" James stopped handing out crumbs and looked me directly in the eyes. "Mrs. Vance, is a good mother one who allows her child to trample all over her? Is a good mother one who teaches her child that they can make decisions for others without consulting them? Is a good mother one who accepts anything to avoid conflict? Then you were not a bad mother. You were a mother who finally decided to teach her daughter a very important lesson." "What lesson?" "That actions have consequences. And that respect is not optional, not even between family." His words comforted me more than I had expected. "Do you know what hurts the most, James?" "What?" "That when Charlotte screamed at me on the phone, she didn't sound sorry for disrespecting me. She sounded furious that her plan didn't work." "That hurts, I know. But it's also giving you very valuable information about who your daughter really is at this moment in her life." "What do you mean?" "That maybe the Charlotte you raised, the sweet and grateful little girl, got lost somewhere along the way. But that doesn't mean she can't find herself again. And if she never finds herself, then you will have learned something painful but necessary, and you can decide how to relate to her based on reality, not on your hopes." The phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. "Mrs. Eleanor Vance?" "Yes?" "This is Linda. Well, I was going to be your—" This is very awkward." Linda sounded nervous, embarrassed. Hello, Linda. Mrs. Vance, I wanted to apologize. I didn't know that Charlotte hadn't consulted you about us living with you. I really didn't know. No, ma'am. She told us that you had insisted we come live with you because you were very lonely, that you wanted company. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. That's what she told you? Yes, ma'am. That's why we accepted. We thought we were doing you a favor. When we arrived this morning and saw your face when you got the call from Charlotte, we realized something wasn't right. Linda, where are you now? At the house, ma'am. We don't know what to do. Robert is trying to calm Charlotte down, but she's beside herself. And Ashley, well, Ashley says this is very awkward and that we should just leave. And what do you want to do? Mrs. Vance, we don't want to cause you any problems. If you prefer that we find another place, we will go. For the first time since yesterday, someone was speaking to me with respect and consideration. Linda, can I ask you something? Of course, ma'am. Do you really need a place to live? Yes, ma'am. We lost our apartment because the owner is going to demolish it. We have 1 month to find something, but with the pension we receive, it's very difficult to find something decent. I understand. Mrs. Vance, what Charlotte did was very wrong. You had every right to decide about your own house. James was looking at me intently. I could see in his eyes that he was realizing something important was happening in that conversation. Linda, may I think about it? Of course, ma'am. And again, I apologize for this misunderstanding. When I hung up, James asked, "What are you going to do?" I don't know yet, but I think I'm starting to understand something. What? That maybe the problem wasn't them coming to live with me. The problem was that nobody asked me if I wanted them to. James nodded slowly, as if he had been waiting for me to reach that conclusion. Mrs. Vance, there is a big difference between helping because one wants to and being forced to help. Exactly. If Linda and Robert really need help, and if they had asked me respectfully, I might have said yes. But Charlotte decided for me, and that's what I can't forgive. And what do you plan to do now? I watched the pigeons. Hope had brought 2 others, and now the 3 of them were pecking near our feet. It was as if they had formed a small family around us. I think I'm going to talk to Linda and Robert, but without Charlotte present. That seems sensible. James, do you think I'm foolish for considering helping them after everything that's happened? No, Mrs. Vance. I think you're being wise. You are separating the people who acted with respect from the one who did not. That afternoon, I returned to the hotel and called Linda. Linda, this is Eleanor Vance. Mrs. Vance, how are you? I'm fine. Linda, could you, Robert, and I talk? Without Charlotte. Of course, ma'am. Where would you like to meet? Do you know the Hope Cafe downtown? Yes, ma'am. Can you be there at 5 o'clock this afternoon? Of course. And Ashley? Can she come too if she wants? I'll ask her and confirm. An hour later, I arrived at the cafe. It was a small, cozy place, with wooden tables and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee floating in the air. Linda and Robert were already there, sitting at a table in the back. They looked nervous but respectful. Linda was a woman in her 60s, with gray hair pulled back in a simple bun and a pale yellow blouse. Robert looked a few years older, with a white mustache and a well-ironed light blue shirt. They both stood up when they saw me arrive. Mrs. Vance, thank you so much for agreeing to talk with us, Robert said, extending his hand. Please, sit down. We settled at the table. The waitress came over, and we ordered coffee for the 3 of us. Ashley isn't coming? No, ma'am, Linda replied. She says this is very awkward, and she prefers to find another solution. I understand. Well, I wanted to talk to you to clear some things up. Of course, Mrs. Vance. First, I want you to know that I'm not angry with you. I'm angry with my daughter for the way she handled this whole situation. Linda and Robert exchanged a look of relief. Second, I want to understand exactly what Charlotte told you and what your real situation island. Robert took the lead. Mrs. Vance, we lived in an apartment in the San Miguel neighborhood for 15 years. The owner of the building died, and his heirs decided to sell the land to a developer. They gave us 3 months' notice to vacate. And you haven't been able to find another place? We've been looking, ma'am, Linda continued, But with our retirement pension, most of the places we can afford are in very poor condition or in very dangerous neighborhoods. How much is your pension? Between the two of us, about $400 a month, Robert replied. It was a small amount. I understood why they were having trouble finding something decent. And how do you know Charlotte? She's our daughter-in-law, Linda explained. She's been married to our son Michael for 8 years. Is Michael on board with you living in my house? Linda and Robert looked at each other uncomfortably. Well, Mrs. Vance, Robert said, Michael is working in another country. He left 6 months ago to look for better job opportunities. Does he know what happened today? We sent him a message telling him, but with the time difference, he hasn't responded yet. The waitress brought our coffees. I took a sip while processing the information. Linda, Robert, I want to ask you a direct question. Did you really believe that I had insisted you come live with me? Linda looked down. At first, yes, ma'am. Charlotte told us that you felt very lonely in that big house and had mentioned that you would like some company. But when we arrived this morning and saw your face when you received the call from Charlotte, we realized something wasn't right, Robert admitted. What made you realize that? The way Charlotte was screaming at you on the phone, Linda said. A daughter doesn't scream at her mother like that unless she knows she's doing something wrong. I was surprised by their perceptiveness. And what do you plan to do now? Mrs. Vance, Robert said, we don't want to be a burden to anyone. If you prefer that we find another place, we completely understand. But what would you do? Where would you go? We have some savings, Linda explained. We could rent a room in a boarding house for a month or two while we look for something more permanent. A room for both of you? Yes, ma'am. It's not ideal, but we've lived in worse conditions. I looked at both of them. They were humble, polite people who were in a difficult situation through no fault of their own. It was very different from the image I had formed in my head of freeloaders who wanted to live for free. Linda, Robert, may I make you a proposal? Of course, ma'am. What would you think if we tried an arrangement for 1 month? They looked at each other, surprised. What kind of arrangement, Mrs. Vance? You can stay in the house. I will pay for the necessary basic furniture, a bed, a small table, 2 chairs, a used refrigerator. Nothing fancy, but functional. Ma'am, we can't accept that without paying you something, Robert protested. Let me finish. You would help me. Robert, could you maintain the garden and do minor repairs? Linda, if you like to cook, could you prepare food for me a few times a week? And where would you live? Linda asked. I'll stay in my hotel room for now. I need time to think about what I want to do with my life. But Mrs. Vance, Robert said, it's your house. You should live there. Robert, after what happened, that house no longer feels like my home. Maybe later, but not now. Linda had tears in her eyes. Mrs. Vance, why would you do this for us after everything that's happened? Because you are treating me with respect. Because you are asking me instead of deciding for me. And because I believe everyone deserves a second chance. And what about Charlotte? Robert asked. Charlotte will have to learn that actions have consequences. If she wants to be part of this arrangement, she will have to apologize to me first. And she will have to prove that she can respect me. Do you think she will? I don't know, but that's her decision. Linda reached out and touched my hand across the table. Mrs. Vance, you are an angel. No, Linda, I'm just a woman who is learning to set boundaries. When could we start? Tomorrow, if you like. I'll take care of buying the basics and having them delivered. And how much would we pay for rent? $100 a month to cover basic utilities, and you'll be in charge of the food. Robert and Linda looked at each other, excited. Mrs. Vance, Robert said, that's less than what we were paying in the old apartment. I know, but I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing it because I believe it's the right thing to do. What do you need us to do? Keep the house clean and well-maintained. Respect me as the owner. And understand that this is a temporary arrangement while we all decide what we want to do long-term. Perfect, ma'am, they said at the same time. There's one more condition. What is it? If Charlotte shows up at the house without having spoken to me first, you are not to let her in. This is my house, and I decide who can be there. Understood, Robert said firmly. And Ashley? Ashley decided to find another place. She says she doesn't want to be in the middle of family problems, Linda explained. Better for everyone. We talked for another hour. They told me about their lives, their previous jobs, their worries. They were good people who had simply had bad luck. It was refreshing to talk to people who treated me like a person with a right to an opinion about my own life. When we said goodbye, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, that I had made a decision for myself based on what I considered right, without letting others decide for me. That night, as I was having dinner alone in my hotel room, my phone rang. It was Charlotte. This time, I answered. "Hello, Charlotte. Mom, Linda told me they're going to live in the house anyway." "That's right. But that's exactly what I had planned from the beginning." "No, Charlotte. What you had planned was to force me to accept house guests without consulting me. What I decided was to help Linda and Robert because they asked me with respect. It's the same thing. It's not the same thing. And if you can't see the difference, then we have a much bigger problem than I thought." "Mom, I don't understand why you're being so dramatic," Charlotte continued. "In the end, everyone wins. Linda and Robert have a place to live, you have company, and I can rest easy knowing you're not alone." Her words confirmed that she truly didn't understand what she had done wrong. "Charlotte, do you hear what you're saying?" "What do you mean?" "You're talking as if I were an object to be managed, as if my house were yours to dispose of, as if my feelings don't matter." "Oh, Mom, don't exaggerate." "I'm not exaggerating. Let me give you an example. How would you feel if I showed up at your house tomorrow and told you I decided 3 people are going to live with you without asking you?" "That's different." "Why is it different?" Because you're my mom. And because I'm your mom, I don't have the right to decide about my own life?" There was a silence on the other end of the line. "Mom, I just wanted to help." "Charlotte, if you really wanted to help, you would have asked me first. You would have said, 'Mom, Linda and Robert need a place to live. Would you be okay with them staying with you for a while?' And then I would have been able to decide. And you would have said yes. Possibly. But we'll never know because you didn't give me the chance to choose." Charlotte sighed. "Okay, Mom, maybe I should have asked you first." "Not maybe, Charlotte. You definitely should have asked me. I already said maybe I should have done it differently. What more do you want?" Her tone was still defensive, as if she were doing me a favor by partially admitting her mistake. "I want you to understand that what you did was wrong. Not maybe wrong, wrong." "Oh my God, Mom, what do you want? For me to get on my knees and beg for your forgiveness?" "I want you to respect that I am an adult capable of making my own decisions. I want you to understand that you cannot dispose of my life without consulting me. And yes, I want a sincere apology, not a half-hearted one. This is ridiculous. For you, maybe. For me, it's very important. You know what, Mom? Do whatever you want. You've always been very stubborn anyway." And she hung up. I stared at the phone for several minutes. It was incredible how Charlotte had managed to turn me into the problematic one in the situation. According to her, I was dramatic, exaggerated, and stubborn. At no point had she truly taken responsibility for her actions. I couldn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned in bed, thinking about all the times Charlotte had made decisions for me over the years. Small things that, at the time, I had let slide because it was easier or because she just wanted to help. The time she decided I needed to change doctors because mine was too old. The time she gave away my antique sewing machine because I wasn't using it anymore, without asking me. The time she canceled my newspaper subscription because the news only depressed me. I realized that the issue with the house wasn't an isolated event. It was the culminating pattern of years of disrespect, disguised as care. The next day, I got up early and went to buy used furniture. I found a store that sold things in good condition at reasonable prices. I chose a simple queen bed, a small dining table with 2 chairs, a refrigerator that worked well, and a modest but comfortable sofa. "Is this all going to the same address?" the salesman asked. "Yes, and I need it delivered this afternoon." "Are you furnishing a whole house?" "Something like that." Then I went to the supermarket and bought basic provisions: rice, beans, oil, salt, some canned goods, coffee, sugar, enough for Linda and Robert to cook for the first few days. At 3 in the afternoon, I arrived at the house. Linda and Robert were waiting for me on the front lawn, sitting on the porch with their 2 suitcases beside them. "Mrs. Vance, we didn't know if you were coming," Linda said, getting up quickly. "I told you I would, and here I am." "What should we do with the keys?" Robert asked. "Charlotte took the ones she had, and we don't know if you want us to keep them." "I have my set of keys. I'll give you copies later." The delivery trucks arrived an hour later. It was satisfying to see the empty house fill with life again, but this time under my own terms. Linda and Robert worked with me to arrange everything. Robert turned out to be very handy at assembling furniture, and Linda had a good eye for organizing spaces functionally. "Mrs. Vance," Linda said as we were setting up the kitchen, "we don't know how to thank you." "Don't thank me. This works out for all of us. When are you going to move in?" "I don't know yet. I need time to think." The truth was, I liked the independence of the hotel. For the first time in a long time, I had a space that was completely my own, where no one could enter without my permission, where I could make decisions without consulting anyone. "Mrs. Vance," Robert said, "my son Michael called last night from the United States." "Oh yes? And what did he say?" "He's very embarrassed about what Charlotte did. He says he never asked her to find us a house, and that he didn't know she had done all this without consulting you." "Is Michael coming back soon?" "No, ma'am. He got a good job there and plans to stay for at least 2 more years. But he says that when he comes back, he will take responsibility for us." "And what do you want to do?" Linda and Robert looked at each other. "Mrs. Vance," Linda said, "if you would allow us to stay here for those 2 years, we would save enough to put down a deposit on a small apartment when Michael returns. That's a long time." "We know. If it seems too long, we can look for something else." I looked at both of them. In 2 days, they had shown me more consideration and respect than my own daughter had in years. "Let's see how the first month goes," I told them. "If we're all comfortable, we can talk about extending the arrangement." Their faces lit up. "Really? Really?" That afternoon, while Linda was cooking and Robert was working in the garden, I sat on the front porch reading a book I had bought at the hotel. It was a novel about a woman who travels through Europe alone after being widowed. It had been years since I had read for pleasure. James appeared in his garden and greeted me from across the fence. "Mrs. Vance, how are things going?" "Very well, James. Have you met Linda and Robert?" "Yes, they're very nice. Robert offered to help me with pruning my trees. They're good people." James came over to the fence that separated our yards. "And how do you feel about your decision?" "I feel good. I feel like I've taken back control of my life." "And your daughter?" "Charlotte still doesn't understand what she did wrong, but that's her problem, not mine." James nodded. "Mrs. Vance, may I say something?" "Of course. Since I've known you, which has only been 2 days, I've seen you change. Yesterday you looked like a defeated woman. Today you look like a woman who knows what she wants." His words touched my heart. "Thank you, James." "Are you going to stay for dinner with Linda and Robert?" "No, I'm going back to the hotel. I still need my space." "That seems very wise." That night, as I was having dinner at the hotel restaurant, the young receptionist who had checked me in on the first day approached me. "Mrs. Vance, how is your new life?" "It's going very well, thank you." "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "How did you know it was time to change?" The question surprised me. "Why do you ask?" "It's just that I'm 25 years old, and I feel like everyone makes decisions for me. My boyfriend, my parents, my boss. Sometimes I feel like I don't have a voice in my own life." I recognized myself in her words. "Do you know what made me change?" "What?" "Realizing that if I didn't defend my right to decide about my life, no one else would." "But weren't you scared?" "Terrified. But I was more scared of continuing to live as if my opinion didn't matter." The girl smiled. "You are very brave." "I'm not brave. I'm just tired of being invisible in my own life." I slept better that night than I had in a long time. For the first time in years, I felt in control of my destiny. But I knew the hardest part was yet to come. The next morning the phone woke me up. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Eleanor Vance?" "Yes, who is this?" "This is Michael, Charlotte's husband. I'm calling from the United States." My heart sped up. Michael had always been respectful to me. but we hadn't spoken in months. "Hello, Michael. How are you?" "Mrs. Vance, first I want to offer you a huge apology for what happened. My parents told me everything, and I am so embarrassed." "Michael, you don't have to apologize for something you didn't do." "Yes, I do, because Charlotte is my wife, and she acted in the name of my family without my permission." "Have you spoken to her?" "Last night we had a very long conversation. Very long and very difficult. And, Mrs. Vance, I didn't know that Charlotte had lied to my parents. I never asked her to find them a house, much less to force you to take them in." "What did she say when you confronted her?" Michael sighed deeply. "At first, she tried to justify herself, saying she just wanted to help everyone. But when I asked her why she hadn't consulted you first, she got defensive. And then I asked her why she had lied to my parents, telling them you wanted company. That's when she got furious and told me I didn't understand because I wasn't here." "Michael, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Does Charlotte have a habit of making decisions for others without consulting them?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Mrs. Vance, I'm ashamed to admit it, but yes. It's part of the reason I decided to come work here." "What do you mean?" "Charlotte, well, she's always had a tendency to want to control everything. At first, I thought it was because she cared so much about the family. But then I realized she doesn't like others making decisions, not even about their own lives." His words hurt, but they didn't surprise me. "And how is she with you?" "With my parents, she has always been very bossy. She tells them which doctors they should see, what medicines they should take, what television shows are good for them. At first, my parents allowed it because they thought it was love. And now? Now my parents told me they're tired of her making decisions for them. That's why, when you proposed the arrangement by consulting them and respecting their opinion, they were so relieved." "Michael, do you think Charlotte can change?" "I don't know, Mrs. Vance. Last night I told her she had to apologize to you sincerely. I explained that what she had done was very wrong." "And what did she say?" "That you were exaggerating, and that in the end, everything had turned out fine because my parents had a place to live." "So she still doesn't get it?" "No, Mrs. Vance, she doesn't get it." I was processing the information. It was painful to hear that the problem with Charlotte was deeper than I had thought. "Michael, what are you planning to do?" "Mrs. Vance, I'm coming back in a year and a half. When I return, my parents are going to come live with me. But in the meantime, if you are willing to continue helping them, I will send you money every month to cover the expenses." "That's not necessary, Michael. The arrangement I have with them is working well." "I insist, Mrs. Vance. It's the least I can do after all this trouble." "And what does Charlotte think of that?" "Charlotte is going to have to learn to live with the consequences of her decisions." After hanging up with Michael, I sat thinking for a long time. It was clear that Charlotte had a serious problem with control and respect for others. But it was also clear that I had been part of the problem by allowing this behavior for years. I decided to go for a walk in the square to clear my head. James was on his usual bench feeding the pigeons. "Good morning, Mrs. Vance. How did you wake up?" "With a lot on my mind, James." "Do you want to tell me?" I told him about the conversation with Michael. James listened attentively while the pigeons pecked around our feet. "Do you know what hurts the most, James?" "What?" "Realizing that I allowed Charlotte to develop this behavior. Every time she made decisions for me and I said nothing, I was teaching her it was okay to do so." "Mrs. Vance, you can't blame yourself for wanting to avoid conflict with your daughter. But by avoiding small conflicts, I allowed a much larger conflict to be created. That's true, but it's also true that it's never too late to change the dynamic." "But what if Charlotte doesn't want to change?" James looked at me with those wise eyes that were now familiar to me. "Then you will have to decide what kind of relationship you want to have with someone who doesn't respect you." His words were harsh but necessary. "James, do you think I'm a bad mother for setting boundaries so late?" "Mrs. Vance, a bad mother is one who never sets boundaries. A good mother is one who sets them when she realizes they are necessary, regardless of how old her children are." That afternoon, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years: go shopping for myself. Not for practical or necessary clothes, but for something I liked simply because I liked it. I went into a clothing store I had always looked at from the outside but never visited. A young saleswoman approached. Can I help you with anything? I'm looking for something different. Something to make me feel good about myself. What colors do you like? I thought for a moment. It had been so long since I had only bought clothes in black, gray, or brown because it was practical. I like green. And gold. Perfect. I have a few things I think you'll love. I tried on several dresses and blouses. It was strange to see myself in the mirror in vibrant colors after so many years of muted tones. That emerald green dress looks beautiful on you, the saleswoman told me. Do you have a special event? Number? I just want to feel good. That's the best reason to buy new clothes. I bought the emerald green dress, a golden blouse, and a necklace of orange beads I would never have considered before. It was the first time in years I had spent money on something completely unnecessary, but that made me happy. When I returned to the hotel, the receptionist looked at me with admiration. Mrs. Vance, you look beautiful in that color. Thank you, dear. Can I ask you something? Of course. How do you find the courage? Yesterday, my boyfriend told me I couldn't go out with my friends because he had other plans for us, and I just accepted. What would you have wanted to do? Tell him that he can make his plans, but I already had mine. And why didn't you tell him that? Because I'm afraid he'll get angry. And does it seem normal to you to be afraid of your own partner? The girl thought for a moment. No, I guess not. Dear, no one who truly loves you should make you afraid to express your opinion. Do you think I should talk to him? I think you should ask yourself what kind of relationship you want to have. One where your voice matters, or one where you have to ask for permission to live your own life. That night, as I was having dinner in my room, the phone rang. It was Charlotte. Mom, Michael called me. And? He says I have to apologize to you. And what do you think? I think everyone is overreacting to all of this. Charlotte, do you really believe you did nothing wrong? Look, Mom, maybe I could have handled it better, but my intentions were good. Intentions don't justify the methods, Charlotte. What do you want me to do? Get on my knees and beg for forgiveness for trying to help? I want you to understand that what you did was wrong, that you respect that I am an adult, and yes, I want a sincere apology. This is ridiculous. For you, maybe. For me, it's the difference between having a relationship with you or not. Are you threatening me? I'm not threatening you. I'm explaining the consequences of your actions. You know what, Mom? Do whatever you want. You've always been so dramatic anyway. Charlotte, when you are ready to talk to me like an adult who respects another adult, call me. Until then, we are not going to talk. Seriously? Seriously. You can't be serious. Very serious. And I hung up. It was the first time in my life I had hung up on my daughter. It was the first time I had set a clear and definitive boundary. My hands were shaking, but inside I felt a strange calm. I had taken control of my life. Now Charlotte would have to decide if she wanted to be a part of it under my conditions, or if she preferred to continue believing she could trample on me without consequences. For the first time in years, the decision was not mine. It was hers. The following days were strange but liberating. For the first time in a long time, my phone wasn't constantly ringing with Charlotte asking for something or complaining about something. It was as if I had reclaimed a silence I didn't know I had lost. I established a routine that I liked. I would wake up early, have breakfast at the hotel restaurant, go for a walk in the square with James and his pigeons, and then visit Linda and Robert to see how things were going at the house. Linda had turned out to be an excellent cook. When I arrived, she always had fresh coffee and some homemade dessert waiting for me. Mrs. Vance, she told me one day as we were having coffee in the kitchen, can I ask you a personal question? Of course, Linda. Don't you miss living in your house? I thought about it. It was a question I had asked myself several times. I miss the idea of the house, but I don't miss the anxiety of feeling like I had no control over my own space. Do you think you'll ever want to go back? Maybe. When I feel like it's truly my home and not just a house where others make decisions for me. No, Robert came in from the garden with his hands full of dirt. Mrs. Vance, the roses we planted last week are blooming very well. It was true. Robert had transformed the garden into something beautiful. He had planted vibrantly colored flowers, fixed the irrigation system, and created small paths among the bushes. It looks beautiful. Robert, do you want us to plant something special somewhere? What do you suggest? There's a corner by the living room window that gets sun all morning. It would be perfect for an herb garden. I love the idea. As Robert explained his plans for the garden, I realized that this was what I had imagined when I bought the house. Quiet conversations about simple but important things, plans made jointly, with mutual respect. Linda, Robert, I said suddenly, can I ask you something? Of course, ma'am. Are you happy with this arrangement? They looked at each other and smiled. Mrs. Vance, Linda said, we haven't felt this peaceful in years. Why? Because you treat us like people, Robert explained. You ask for our opinion, you respect our decisions, you make us feel useful without making us feel like a burden. That's exactly how I like to be treated, I replied. That afternoon, on my way back to the hotel, I ran into James in the square. Mrs. Vance, do you have a minute? Of course, James. What's up? I wanted to tell you something that happened today. We sat on our usual bench. This morning, a young woman came to my house asking for you. She said she was your daughter. My heart sped up. Charlotte went to look for you? Yes. She asked me if I knew where you were living. And what did you tell her? I told her it wasn't my place to give out information about you without your permission. How did she react? She got very upset. She told me you were her mother and she had a right to know where you were. And? I told her the only right she had was the one you chose to give her. I was surprised by James's loyalty. We had only known each other for 2 weeks, but he was protecting me as if we were lifelong friends. What else happened? Then she went to the house and knocked on the door. Linda opened it. Did Linda tell her where I am? Number Linda told her you had been very clear. If Charlotte wanted to talk to you, she had to call you first. And how did Charlotte react? She got furious. She yelled at Linda that it was her house too, and that she had a right to come in. But she didn't come in? Number? Robert came out and calmly explained that you were the owner of the house and that they were going to respect your instructions. And then? Then Charlotte yelled at them that everyone was conspiring against her and left very angry. I was processing the information. It was painful to know that my daughter had gone looking for me, but it was also comforting to know that the people I had chosen to surround myself with were respecting my boundaries. James, do you think I was wrong not to talk to her? Mrs. Vance, had you clearly told her what your conditions were for talking? Yes. I told her she had to apologize sincerely and acknowledge that what she did was wrong. And had she met those conditions? Number. Then you did nothing wrong. You set clear boundaries, and you are maintaining them. I had trouble sleeping that night. A part of me wanted to call Charlotte and fix things, but the more rational part knew that giving in now would mean going back to the same old pattern. The next day, I decided to do something I had been putting off for weeks. Find new activities for my free time. I found a community center that offered dance classes for senior citizens. I had never danced in my life, but something about the idea appealed to me. You've never danced? The instructor, a cheerful woman in her 50s, asked me. Never, but I've always wanted to learn. Perfect. There's no pressure here, just fun. The class was small, only 8 people, all over 60. There were 3 men and 5 women, all with stories similar to mine, people who had dedicated decades to caring for others and now wanted to do something for themselves. I'm Abigail. A woman with silver hair and a fuchsia dress introduced herself. I started coming after my husband died. At first, I came because I didn't know what to do with so much free time, but now I come because I love it. I'm Daniel, said a slim man in a white shirt. My kids told me I should stay home and watch television, but I wanted something more active. And what did they say when you told them you were coming to dance classes? I asked. At first, they made fun of me. Then, when they saw how happy I was, they stopped having an opinion. The class was fun, albeit clumsy. My feet didn't coordinate well with the music, but I laughed more than I had in months. How did it feel? The instructor asked me at the end, like I woke up a part of me that was asleep. That's exactly the idea. When I left the community center, I felt different, lighter, younger, more alive. I decided to walk through the downtown area instead of taking the bus. There were shops I had never noticed, cafes with live music, a small bookstore with a travel section. I went into the bookstore and lost myself among the shelves. There were books about countries I had never considered visiting, guides for women traveling alone, stories of people who had changed their lives after 60. "Can I help you?" The bookseller, an older man with glasses and a kind smile, asked me. "I'm looking for." "I don't know exactly what I'm looking for." "Those are the best customers. What kind of things do you like?" "Stories of people who started over when they thought it was too late." "I have exactly what you need." He took me to a special section and showed me several books. One immediately caught my eye. "It's Never Too Late to Be Who You Want to Be." "This one is very popular with our customers over 60, he told me. I bought the book and sat in a nearby cafe to read it. The first chapter talked about how many people spend decades living the life others expect of them, until one day they realize they have never asked themselves what they really want. It was as if the book had been written for me. My phone rang. It was Linda. "Mrs. Vance, I'm sorry to bother you." "You're not bothering me, Linda. What's wrong?" Charlotte came by again. "Yes?" This time she came with a man who says he's a lawyer. My blood ran cold. "A lawyer? What for?" "He says he wants to review the house papers because she has a legal right to live here." "Where are they now?" "They left when Robert told them they couldn't come in without a court order." "Robert knew that?" His son Michael had explained to him over the phone what to say if something like this happened. "Michael knew this could happen?" "Yes, ma'am. Apparently, Charlotte told him she was going to seek legal help to resolve the issue." I hung up and immediately called Michael. "Mrs. Vance, I imagine why you're calling." "Michael, what's going on?" "Charlotte hired a lawyer to see if she can force you to let her live in the house." "Can she do that?" "No, Mrs. Vance. The house is completely in your name. You can decide who lives there and who doesn't." "Then why is she trying?" "Because she's desperate, and because she truly believes she has the right to make decisions about your life." "Michael, what are you going to do?" "I've already done something. I told Charlotte that if she continues with this, when I come back, I will not be financially responsible for her." "Really?" "Very seriously. Mrs. Vance, what Charlotte is doing is wrong, and it's time someone told her that clearly." When I hung up, my hands were shaking. It was incredible how far Charlotte was willing to go to get her way. But I also realized something important. I no longer felt alone in facing this. Linda, Robert, James, Michael, even the hotel receptionist, they were all supporting me. For the first time in years, I had a support network made up of people who respected me. It was time to show Charlotte that she was no longer dealing with the mother who let herself be trampled on. It was time for the final confrontation. The next day, I decided it was time to end this situation once and for all. I couldn't keep living with the constant threat of Charlotte showing up with lawyers or inventing new ways to pressure me. I called Linda in the morning. "Linda, I want you to organize something for this afternoon." "What do you need, Mrs. Vance?" "I want you to call Charlotte and tell her I'm willing to talk to her, but under my conditions." "What conditions?" "The meeting will be at the house, at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. You, Robert James, as a witness, and I will be present. No lawyers, no shouting, no threats." "Are you sure, Mrs. Vance?" "Completely sure." "And if she doesn't accept the conditions?" "Then there is no meeting. But Linda, I need you to make it very clear to her that this is her last chance to talk to me. If she rejects this meeting, or if she comes with lawyers, or if she disrespects anyone present, there will not be a next time. Understood, Mrs. Vance?" An hour later, Linda called me back. "Mrs. Vance, I spoke with Charlotte, and?" At first, she was very upset. She said, "Why do other people have to be present?" "What did you tell her?" "I told her that those were your conditions, take them or leave them." "And in the end, what did she decide?" "She's coming, but she said this was ridiculous and that you were being very dramatic." "Linda, are you and Robert comfortable being present?" "Yes, Mrs. Vance. We want to support you." I spent the rest of the day mentally preparing for the confrontation. I put on my new emerald green dress, the one that made me feel strong and confident. At 4:30, I arrived at the house. Linda had prepared coffee and had arranged chairs in the living room so we could all sit comfortably. Robert had cut some flowers from the garden and put them in a vase in the center of the table. James arrived promptly at 5 minutes to 5. "Mrs. Vance, are you ready for this?" "As ready as one can be." At exactly 5 o'clock, Charlotte arrived. I saw her coming from the window. She came alone, dressed in a formal black suit, as if it were a business meeting. Her expression was one of annoyance and determination. Linda opened the door for her. "Hello, Charlotte. Please, come in." Charlotte entered and looked around the living room. It was the first time she had seen the furnished house since the day she took everything. "I see you bought new furniture," she said without greeting me. "Hello, Charlotte. Yes, I bought what was necessary." She sat in the chair that was opposite me. Linda and Robert sat to one side, James to the other. "Why do all these people have to be present?" Charlotte asked, annoyed. "Because they are witnesses to this conversation. And because they are the people who have supported me when you decided to disrespect me." "Mom, this is ridiculous." "Charlotte, I set the rules for this meeting very clearly. If you are not willing to respect them, you can leave right now." She settled into her chair with a look of annoyance. "Fine. What do you want me to do? I want you to explain to me why you believe you had the right to make decisions about my house without consulting me." "Mom, we've already talked about this. I just wanted to help Linda and Robert, and I thought you would want to help them too." "Charlotte, that is not an explanation. That is a justification. I am asking you why you did not consult me before deciding." Because I knew you would put up obstacles." "What kind of obstacles?" "You would have said you didn't have space, or that you didn't know Linda and Robert well, or that you wanted to be alone. And those wouldn't have been valid reasons?" "But Mom, you have a 3-bedroom house. You have plenty of space." "Charlotte, do you understand that the size of my house does not give you the right to decide who lives in it?" "But it's just that you've always been very closed off to meeting new people." James leaned forward. "Excuse me for interrupting, but did you ask your mother if she wanted to meet new people?" Charlotte looked at him, annoyed. "You have no business getting involved in this." "Charlotte," I said firmly, "James is here because I invited him. Are you going to treat him with respect, or does this conversation end?" "Fine, fine." Linda spoke for the first time. "Charlotte, can I ask you something?" "What?" "Why did you tell us that your mother wanted us to come live with her?" Charlotte turned red. Because I knew you wouldn't accept if you thought it was charity." "But it was charity," Robert said. "And there's nothing wrong with that if it's offered with respect." "Charlotte," I continued, "do you understand that lying to Linda and Robert was also wrong?" "I didn't lie to them. I just adapted the truth to make them feel better." "That's called lying, Charlotte." "Oh, Mom, don't be so dramatic." "Charlotte, that is exactly the attitude that bothers me. Every time I point out something you did wrong, you tell me I'm being dramatic or exaggerating." "But you are exaggerating. Do you think it's an exaggeration that I want to have a say in my own house?" "No, but do you think it's an exaggeration that I want to be consulted before you invite people to live with me?" "No, but do you think it's an exaggeration that I want my feelings to be considered?" "No, but it all turned out well. Linda and Robert have a place to live. You have company. Everyone wins." James spoke again. "Excuse me, Charlotte, but do you believe that the end justifies the means?" "What do you mean?" "That if the result is good, it doesn't matter how it was achieved." "In this case, yes." "And what if your mother had decided to sell the house out of frustration from all of this? The result would still be good. But she didn't sell the house." "But she could have, and it would have been your fault." Charlotte was quiet for a moment. "Look, Mom, maybe I could have handled it differently, but my intentions were good." "Charlotte, do you know how many times you've told me that in the last few days?" "What?" "That maybe you could have handled it differently. That your intentions were good, but you have never said that what you did was wrong. Because I don't think it was that wrong." "Really? Really?" I got up from my chair and walked to the window overlooking the garden. The roses that Robert had planted were blooming beautifully. "Charlotte, do you know what Michael told me when he spoke with me?" "What did he tell you?" "He told me that you have a habit of making decisions for others without consulting them. Is that true?" Michael exaggerates. "Does he? Linda? Robert? Have you noticed that?" Linda and Robert looked at each other uncomfortably. "Answer my mom," Charlotte said, annoyed. "Charlotte," Linda said hesitantly, "you often tell us what medicines we should take, what television shows are good for us, because I care about you. But you never ask us if we want that help," Robert added. "See?" I told her. "I'm not the only one who feels this way." Charlotte was quiet for several minutes. I could see she was processing the information, but also that she was fighting against it. "Charlotte," I finally said, "I need you to understand something very important." "What?" "I love you. You are my daughter, and you will always be my daughter, but I will not allow you to continue treating me as if my opinion doesn't matter. Mom, I need you to acknowledge that what you did was wrong, not mishandled, wrong, and I need you to apologize sincerely. And if I do that, then we can start to rebuild our relationship, but under new rules." "What rules?" "That you respect me as an adult capable of making her own decisions, that you consult me before making plans that involve me, and that you understand that if you break those agreements, I will set boundaries again." Charlotte stared at the floor for a long time. When she looked up, she had tears in her eyes. "Mom, it's very hard for me to admit that I was wrong." "I know, sweetie, but it's necessary. It's just that I've always thought I knew what was best for everyone. And now I realize that maybe I don't always know what's best for others." It was the first real sign of reflection I had seen in her. "Mom, what I did was wrong. I shouldn't have decided for you. I shouldn't have lied to Linda and Robert. And I shouldn't have reacted so badly when you confronted me. And I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry." For the first time in weeks, her apology sounded sincere. "Thank you, Charlotte. We can try to start over. We can try, but it will take time to rebuild the trust." "I understand. And you understand that Linda and Robert are going to stay here until Michael returns?" "Yes, and that's fine. I like seeing that they're comfortable. And you understand that I am going to continue living at the hotel until I feel ready to come back?" "Why?" "Because I need time for myself. To get to know myself better. To do things I've never done." "Like what?" "Like dance classes." Charlotte smiled for the first time that whole afternoon. "You're taking dance classes?" "Yes, and it's a lot of fun. I'm glad, Mom." "Charlotte, do you know what I want most from you?" "What?" "For you to be happy, but for you to be happy without controlling other people's lives." "I'll try, Mom. That's all I ask." We stood up and hugged. It wasn't the end of our problems, but it was the beginning of a new way of relating to each other. Linda served coffee, and we spent the rest of the afternoon talking like a family that respects each other. For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. That night, as I was returning to the hotel, James walked with me to the bus stop. "Mrs. Vance, how do you feel?" "I feel like I got my daughter back, but also like I found myself." "That's the best possible combination. James, thank you for all your support." "Mrs. Vance, you taught me something very important." "What?" "That it's never too late to stand up for yourself, and that the people who truly love us will respect our boundaries." As the bus took me back to the hotel, I looked out the window at the city lights. I no longer felt like a lost and confused woman. I felt like a woman who had learned to value herself. Tomorrow would be another day to continue building the life I really wanted to live. A life where my voice mattered as much as anyone else's. A life where respect was non-negotiable. A life that was finally, truly, my own.